Okay. Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at 8:32. Everyone had a chance to look through the agenda?
Yep.
And we get a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Counselor Bowden, in favor? Assuming we don't have Ange.
Well, you have her here.
Okay, that's fine.
She's muted, but
Excellent.
she's here.
Okay.
If you can kind of see her.
I'm good.
All right.
Okay, so delegations, we have Base Canada.
So I'll just start here for a second. So Claude Mindorf is with Peace Canada LP. Known Claude for 5-6 years. His company at the time was involved in a renewable energy study for the region, and wind, solar, did a bunch of work with Claude and his group, and Claude's back to us with a proposal he's looking at, a development proposal, and I will turn it over to Claude. I think he's just trying to get set up there, and he's good. So the floor is yours, Claude.
Love it when it works.
If I call your quote up, I apologize.
No, it's great. I'm from a family of 11.
Okay.
So my dad used to say, John, Philip, Michael, Susan, you. And there was no Philip, or there was no Susan.
No, I was with you.
We just strolling along. No, really appreciate your time this morning, both to accountant, mayor, and council, staff, and visitors in the gallery. As Kim alluded to, we've been at this for a while in the special areas, and in Hannah in particular. I was working with a previous company that obtained a grant for Hannah to do an inventory of renewable energy, not only in and around the town, but also in special areas. As a result of that, we were able to move a project forward at the Sheerness Mine, which some of you may know of, which received its development permits from special areas late last year, December, which was the last in the permitting for that project. So I'm happy to say that Hannah Sheerness, as it's actually known, will probably go into construction later this year. As Kim alluded, I was with another company called Switch Power. Switch Power was actually the partner with Pace in development of 4 projects in Alberta, of which we're building 3. Hannah Sheerness is the 4th one. Last spring, I moved from Switch over to Pace full time. And Pace was made up between Switch Power 50% and Pathfinder UK, Pathfinder Clean Energy UK. And Switch decided to sell its interest to a German partner called Goldbeck Solar. So Goldbeck Solar is probably Germany's biggest solar constructor, and is also Germany's largest building contractor. So to give you an idea of the scale of the company, Tesla's gigawatt factory outside of Berlin was built by Goldbeck. So they're about a $7 billion a year turnover, something like 6,000 employees. So very, very large entity. Very happy that, despite what's happened in oil and gas with foreign money selling their interests, there's incredible interest to invest in Alberta from offshore. And so this is demonstrated by the partnership of Pathfinder Clean Energy and Goldbeck Solar. So they are the owners of Pace Canada LP. Pace Canada LP is specifically developing distribution-based projects. So those are projects that are on the 25 kV grid and under. This year, we're focusing on what we call urban projects. So projects that are built in the urban boundary, of which we have 6 underway now, with Caroline being the most mature. And will hopefully go into construction later this year as well. That's a 16.1 megawatt project. So we are growing a pipeline of projects. Our target is 500 megawatts in Alberta. We're also starting our first transmission project this year, so connecting to the transmission grid. And that is the second coal mine that's being reclaimed, which is Painter. And Westmoreland agreed to us to build a second solar project on the reclaimed portion of Paint Earth Mine in Forestburg, which will be 60 megawatts. So very excited to enter that realm. All in all, we have about 1,100 megawatts of projects under development and investigation in the province of Alberta. So if anybody tells you that there's no more capacity on the grid, I can tell you there's probably no more capacity on the transmission grid, but the distribution grid is has the ability to accept a lot more renewable energy. With that, this presentation is going to basically talk about some generalities and a couple slides on specifics about this project. So this project was identified during the Community Generation Capacity Building Program when we worked with ATCO to develop the one on the Sheerness Mine. And they said there's additional capacity at the substation in Hannah. And at that point in time, that was not the focus of Switch. And so PACE decided to pick up this project going forward. And I want to stress our core values because I think it makes us very unique amongst solar developers in Alberta. We're all about collaboration. So we try to find communities that we can build in that want to host a project. We're not here to be adversarial. We want to work with the community. I think that's been demonstrated by how we've worked with, how I've worked with Hannah in the past. We're very accountable to the communities that we're in and expect that that they would support our efforts to create sustainable energy as well as community benefits. And if anybody knows me, you know that I'm very, very passionate. We have 3 employees in PACE, 3 Canadian employees in PACE. There's another 18 in the UK. We'll be adding a 4th employee this year. All of them are, one's in Calgary, one's in Brooks, one is in Fredericton, who's going to move to Alberta. So, and I myself live in Rosemary. I own a modular home park in Rosemary. Been at this for about 30 years. So still haven't lost my energy and my enthusiasm for this. We really want to drive positive change in the communities that we're in and help them hit their sustainability targets. So, you know, Alberta has some of the best irradiance and some of the best winds in North America. I liken the solar irradiance, which you'll see in a second on another slide, equivalent to Central California. So people think that California is very hot, very sunny. We're blessed with a predominantly Western weather system that brings us those beautiful solar days of bright, high pressure systems that give us those bright blue skies. We have done an extensive research on the grid, and to do that, again, very uniquely, we hired Fortis, we hired ATCO Transmission. We gave them a bunch of project sites that we thought there was capacity in the grid from research that we had done with the AESO. And they came up with a list from those projects of where there is existing capacity. So to give you a frame of reference, there is 25,000 kilometers of transmission lines in Alberta, and lots of people trying to connect to them, especially in the south and the central, as you are now bracketed by wind farms on both sides. There is 250,000 kilometers of distribution system. And who's connected to the distribution system? Everybody that uses power. Large industrials are direct connected to the transmission system, but most everybody else is connected to an ENMAX, Capital Power, EPCOR, ATCO, or a Fortis distribution connection. And most of the communities have franchise agreements with either ATCO or Fortis or AREA. So this is the system that we're connecting to. Sorry. Back here. So you can see the brown just very quickly before we leave this wind map. You guys are in the central area that on the left side where the wind is. Yes, it's windy in the south. You can see Pincher Creek over on the far left. You can see where one of my wind farms, the Wild Rose Wind Farm, is in the bottom, right on the Montana border. And then you go north a little bit through Medicine Hat, through the base, and then you see that big blue, dark chocolate that sticks out like some at the end of somebody's thumb like that. That's the wind zone. And believe it or not, well, you should believe it because you're now bracketed by wind farms. The Sheerness site also has pretty good winds which we're going to be exploring a little bit later. And then you look on the left side and see the solar. So everybody thinks solar is in Medicine sunny Medicine, southern Saskatchewan. The solar irradiance differs by about 10% up through central Alberta. We've actually prepared wind maps, GIS wind maps for the town and for special areas, which the special areas hosts on their GIS system. And it basically is a better version of this, but indicates exactly the same resource. So you can see how wind and solar can play such a huge role in powering the grid in central East Alberta. And by comparison to the rest of Canada, it's quite obvious that we have a spectacular natural resource. To give you an example, Southern Ontario is about 6.5 meters per second. You can find 7.5 meters per second anywhere in Southern Alberta, pretty much, unless you're in a valley. What does that mean? 1 meter per second generates 3 times as much energy. So we're able to generate more energy from 7.5 to a metric of 3 times the energy that you could from most sites in Ontario. So very blessed. And this is demonstrated by the low cost of renewables that were bid both to the Alberta infrastructure bid, where solar was bid in at $47 a megawatt hour, and the wind RFP that's led to the building of these wind farms, at least one of them, which was, I believe, between $37 and $40 a megawatt hour. So if anybody's paid attention to their electrical bills of late, the average price, wholesale hourly price in November was 16 cents or $160 a megawatt hour. So 4 times what wind is costing. And in December, the average wholesale hourly price was $240 a megawatt hour. So if you look at your electrical bills and you weren't tied into a hedge where you fixed your price, you would have been paying 24 cents a kilowatt in December. So that explains why your bills have gone through the roof. So my suggestion, if you haven't locked in your prices with a retailer, you probably should, because the next six years is going to be a pretty wild ride for electrical prices in Alberta as we move away from coal to other options. Go ahead. Yes.
I'm just wondering about the distribution costs with solar and wind and how that compares to what we're dealing with now. Do you think that would be less? Is there any comparison or?
Well, there's a lot of factors involved in that, including that 40 to 60% of your bill where you live is distribution and transmission tariffs and delivery charges. So your electricity cost, even at 24 cents, is relatively benign. But the way that you manage that, the way that you can manage that is to simply install solar on your roof, because then you displace the actual delivery charges for the energy that you produce and consume at that point.
But there would still be some sort of.
Oh, there's always, yeah, you have to pay to stay connected to the
But
grid.
it would be considerably less.
It would be less, yeah. Yeah. So these are the PACE projects that we're working on. So Joffrey's in construction. We're actually driving the piles starting in February. Roads are all in, fences are up. There's actually 2 projects there, one at 22 megawatts and one at 25 megawatts for a total of 47. We're working on a project in Provost. Sheerness Solar, as you can see, Sheerness Solar is 13.1 and Hannah is anywhere from 13 to 35 megawatts. We're still waiting for the results. And then Youngstown is 7.8 megawatts AC, 6 megawatts flowing to the grid. And then down below, we started a project in Brooks last fall of 18.5. And then we have probably 6 more projects that are in the lease signing stage. My landman, Ron Barg, is over there in the corner. Ron was the gentleman who negotiated the lease with the Price family for the Hannah project. So hopefully in a year, you'll see a lot more. And you'll see that they're focused on central East Alberta, and they are focused on smaller communities. So the proposed Hannah solar farm, that's the legal description. The project is 13.3 to 35 megawatts, subject to the high level study by ATCO. They're studying both the 72 kV transmission line and the 25 kV substation across the road as you come in on side road 142, I think it is.
Pioneer Trail.
Yeah, Pioneer Trail. You'll see on the right side of the road, there's a set of poles that has uprights that are about 1.5 feet long. That's the circuit we're proposing to tie into. If it's 72 kV and if it's 25, it'll be just across the road from where the development is into the substation that's in the southeast corner of Hannah. So we've identified a parcel of 364 acres. You know, when we get that far, the lands will be completely screened by a security fence. And the output will be 13 to 35 megawatts. If it's anything above 25 megawatts, we'll be connecting to the 72. If not, it'll be more likely 13 megawatts. So that'll involve probably about 110 acres in total impacted by the solar out of the 364 acres. We're waiting on the grid capacity for ATCO, which we should have in several weeks, and then we will begin the engineering and the environmental studies.
The slide we have says 182 acres.
That's if it's 35,
Okay.
which I'm hoping for, but I'm not.
No, I'm just.
You
did mention 364 acres.
That's the whole parcel there.
Oh, okay.
So we've leased everything up to the edge of the lake, except for that boundary around John Deere is not definitive. It was done very grossly. But again, that parcel was sold out of that main parcel by the Price family or whoever owned it at the time, and we will account for that in there. That being said, when you see this site and you look at where the wetlands are, having to set back from the water body in the north by 500 meters for migratory birds, taking in consideration the taxiway, the approaches to the airport, and the guidelines that both Transport Canada and FAA have given us. We actually have, our consultant has a very specific software that was designed by the FAA to assess the impact of solar at airports. And you have to be cleared by Homeland Security to get a copy of it. And so that software will be what is used to design the impact to navigation systems and to approaches to the airport, not just the one that runs diagonally this way, but the other two approaches as well. And as such, all of this will be scrutinized by Transport Canada and Nav Canada, both for navigation and for impact to people that are using the airport. To give you an idea, of airports, there are over 100 airports in North America, and I'm talking like Denver, major airports that are literally surrounded by solar. So it can be done with minimal impact to pilots. And essentially, we are not going to build this unless we get approval from Transport Canada and Nav Canada that we can actually accomplish this. That's one of the levels of consultation that we have to do. However, in Canada, airports are also huge consumers of electricity. So in general, airports are looking at solar. We did work with, in my previous company with Edmonton Airport to look at putting solar on their long-term parking lots. There's actually 120 megawatt solar project being built directly north and west of the Edmonton Airport on some lands that the Airport Commission owns. So there's probably 10 projects. The one that comes to mind is Thunder Bay, again, built not on airport property, but adjacent to the airport. There's probably 10 projects that have solar at airports in Canada now. So it's becoming more common as transportation tries to become more sustainable. The Edmonton International Airport uses something like 59,000 megawatt hours of electricity every year. So if you drive up to Edmonton, the Edmonton Airport is the industrial areas all around the airport that are leased from federal land. All that land is federal land, and the Costco and the Rossman Transport and all those guys that are out there are all sitting on leased land, and they all are trying to figure out how to be more sustainable. And so the airport is looking at ways to create a very large project so that they can contribute to people trying to achieve net zero in their operations, including trucking and retail. So this is the project area. So unbeknownst to us, while we were doing all of this, and Kim became aware of what we were doing, he said, oh, you know, this Harvest Sky Hannah Agplex, I don't actually know what their, well, there it is on the bottom, proposed Harvest Sky Ag Center site. I called it an Agplex because that's what we call it in Brooks. So again, as you can see on the bottom, you see Highway 9, and then you see Pioneer Trail up the left-hand side. And you'll see the wetland that's in there, which is, you know, proposed to be changed a little bit, so it's more aesthetically pleasing. But the Harvest Sky Hannah Ag Center, as you can see, the architect has already incorporated agrivoltaics into this, because we've had several meetings with them. One meeting with Harvest Sky, and then another meeting with Harvest Sky and the architectural firm that's doing the design, who I've actually worked with before down in Pincher Creek. Happy to say that the first Yoast cycle turbine wind turbine in Alberta is going to be powering that school, and we supplied that turbine to the project. So here they've got a large open area, they've got buildings. This is all designed to, you can see it's hard pressed up to the airport buildings on the right. Realize that the red crosshatch area is surplus areas, it's green belt, it's parking, it's overflow for events with horse, where you can park trucks and horse trailers and so on and so forth. This is a concept. This is the very, very beginning of this. But one very unique feature about this project is they've applied to the federal government for funding for it. And the driver is that the project, the whole facility must be net zero. So they're already trying to incorporate into this solar and geothermal heat pumps. The architect is designing this, so the whole facility, its energy, both gas and electricity, will have a zero carbon footprint. And that's what the government's driving for people, how they build buildings, super insulate them, put in the lowest economy fixtures as far as energy goes, literally trying to not use electricity in the building if they can avoid it. So we've talked to them about actually supplying renewable energy to this facility from this project, whether it would be directly connected to a portion of it, or it would simply sign a PPA with us as we put the power into the grid. But either way, this is their plan. I'm not really here to speak to this, other than the fact that we're aware of it, and we're working with them to make sure that we can leave them the lands that they're interested in to create this great feature to the entrance to Hannah, which, you know, giving it high visibility along the highway. We have to stay back from the highway anyways, from Alberta Transportation, from a solar project. So we would focus on basically moving this north and to the west as much as possible. And again, I don't know how much of the land is going to be covered until we actually get the results from ATCO on the grid studies. And if anybody's aware, it wants to get more of this, they can contact Harvest Sky, I guess, and which used to be Cactus Corridor, right? So
Yeah.
So the Hannah solar benefits, obviously, temporary construction jobs are anywhere from 60 to 100 people. If you've seen the impact of building wind farms on Hannah, I think motel rooms are at a premium. Restaurants are doing a lot of business. Local suppliers are supplying jobs. I mean, this is a big investment. This project would be $1 to $1.2 million per megawatt. So anywhere from $18 to $25 million investment in materials and labor. We will be creating full-time operations and maintenance jobs. PACE is a full wrap development company, which means we have a development arm that goes out and finds the sites and permits the sites and brings them fully through the AEC. And then we have a construction arm that actually builds them. So our company, as I remember, excuse me, as I mentioned, Goldbeck Solar is Germany's largest engineering procurement and construction. That's what an EPC is. Similar to PCL or Bird Construction or any of those big ones that are building the wind farms, but they specialize in solar. When they came to Canada and made this investment in the portfolio and instructed us to go find another 500 megawatts, they also bought GP Joule, who's one of the most active builders of solar in Canada. So they bought a construction company to build these projects, and GP Joule is now building Youngstown and Joffre. So what they would do, what we typically do as part of our public consultation is we would, at our very last session of public consultation, which we have not begun yet, our modus operandi is that we come to the municipality, we talk to council first. Because if we go into the community and start doing stuff, everybody and their brother is going to contact you anyways, and you're the source of information. And so we've come to you first to give you the best available information. And if you have somebody, one of your constituents that wants more information, just have them reach out to myself or Rhonda Barron, who is our project and public consultation coordinator. Ron has been at public consultation for projects for the last 20 years and has a degree in planning. There's non-traditional farming coming. I mean, the Price family, I have never met them, but I would say, Ron, the mother's in her 80s and the daughters are in 50s, 60s. So they're not actively farming this. They lease it out to a Hutterite colony. We're not disturbing the land. They will continue to graze cattle until we go into development. And then we will find ways, it is our goal and our passion that we will continue agricultural production within the solar farm. And we will demonstrate that the land productivity is increased under our tenure. And that isn't just simply throwing a bunch of sheep and some bees in there, which people call agrivoltaics, which is the mixture of agriculture and renewable energy. We have a much more concerted effort. We're partnering with Lethbridge College in areas where irrigation is used to promote the use of subsoil drip irrigation in replacement of pivot irrigation. And we have partnered with Olds College on dryland farms. So Olds College will be advising us on the agronomy. How does that fit with what you're trying to do with this site? Well, research into how renewable energy can support agriculture is one of those things that the Agplex, which is a research center, can focus on. And when I described agrivoltaics to the design group, engineering group, they got it, that we're not trying to take land out of agricultural production, but increase its productivity. A lot of the lands that we build on are sub-par agricultural lands. Brooks site, 160 acres, is actually so saline that you can see the salt on the surface. It's a quarter section and can host 6 cow-calf pairs. So we're going to put in salt tolerant grasses and try to increase the in that project, and to do some small baling operations in between the rows, and just try to work out the best practices for involving land with solar. I know there's a lot of concern with people who say, if we're going to build solar and keep building solar and keep building solar, we're going to lose agricultural productivity. Not true. Not with this company. There are some 14,000 megawatts of agrivoltaics projects around the world. Japan is probably the leading, along with China, where agricultural land is scarce. They're literally building structures above the agricultural land, putting solar on it, and there's benefits to decreasing the amount of solar irradiance at certain times of the year. They attach irrigation structures to it. That's not what we're going to do in Alberta. We have some other efforts to move the rows further apart, so 60-foot equipment can be used. This is the type of stuff that we're experimenting with, and we're very passionate about collaborating with agriculture, but also collaborating with the communities. Little known fact, a public report published last year, we talked about the impacts of COVID on food prices. Food prices in Alberta were at 10.1% inflation rate last year as of December. Growing more food locally, growing more food and making things from it in Alberta is really what renewable energy is about. We have lots of interest from companies like Vertical Grow Ops that are looking for renewable energy specifically to power their operations. And we've been in discussions with a couple of them. We'd like to try and bring something like that to each of the communities that we're in as part of the community benefits. There is no water consumed to make electricity from a solar or wind project. And if you go down the road to Sheerness, you'll see the signs on the road that say, it's gonna be foggy here sometimes. And Oasis Lake is right behind it. The Oasis Lake is a cooling pond for the gas plant. So gas plants will either use cooling towers, which you've seen with the big clouds above them at some oil and gas facilities. And then you have places where they actually use river water to cool them. And that's what Painter and Sheerness do. So we don't consume any water. We're a water scarce region in Alberta. And so we're happy to promote that benefit. Honestly, there could be no better driver than investing 12, 15, $25 million in a community, because for every dollar we spend, the multiplier effect benefit to the community is 2 to 1. So every dollar we spend in this community, buying supplies, hiring people, has the benefit of that extrapolation. And of course, we don't produce any greenhouse gas emissions. This is really, folks, not about oil and gas over renewables. My last job was all about finding, well, all of my customers in the last job that I worked with for Switch, we were designing solar facilities behind the fence for oil and gas. And they're building probably 17 projects now that are for oil and gas partners who are doing it because electricity from behind the fence projects is cheaper and they're trying to lower their production cost. The side benefit is they get the greenhouse gas attributes that actually help them manage their emissions targets with the Alberta government. So it's a win-win situation. Some of the largest investors in wind and solar in the province are oil and gas companies, to mention a few: Tourmaline, Pembina, Enbridge, Suncor, all major investors in solar and wind. So this is where we're at. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
There's a few questions that have popped up.
This is almost the end, and then
Okay.
we can build them.
Yeah.
So this is basically, if you figure on the left-hand side, that's the starting point, Q1, 2020, or sorry, Q4 2022. We identified the lands, we signed the lease, we informed through Kim that we were going to be doing this project. I actually had an earlier meeting because we had identified a different site. So that's another point to make. We haven't just looked at one site in the town. We've looked at 3 or 4, found that this is probably the one with the least impact to the general population. Yes, I know it has a significant impact to the airport, but I believe there's a workable solution there, and it's a technical solution. So the rest of these are studies that go on. So we do our noise glare studies. That's one of the first studies that we do. So people, particularly pilots, can understand the impact. Then we do a grid application, which is coming up as soon as ATCO gives us the high level study. We can apply to the AESO to connect. Then we look at all the other surface users, including, so that's what crossing agreements it is. That's where Harvest Sky fits. So we try and find out who wants to use the site, who is using the site. And we have, obligations to honor oil and gas right-of-ways, pipeline right-of-ways, pads, so on and so forth. We will start our environmental assessment. One of the benefits of doing an environmental assessment inside the urban boundary is we have to go to the AEP and do a very short summary project of the land and file for what's called a waiver letter, where they give us a letter that says, this land is probably the lowest impact of any lands that you could use, and it's inside the urban boundary, as opposed to spending several $100,000 and 14 months to do bird bat bunnies, botanicals, body studies for the AEP if it was outside the urban boundary. So they want to promote sustainability in the urban area. So they've basically said, we'll make it a little bit easier for you to do it inside of an urban project, because we want to see urban populations promote sustainability. So this is one of the ways where you don't have to invest a dime. The Hannah municipality doesn't have to invest a dime, but in the end, that project will be producing more energy inside of Hannah to the substation that Hannah's connected to, because it's fed by the 72 kV. So that literally this community would be sustainable on the electricity side just by hosting this project. So then we move through engineering, the grid interconnection. The grid interconnection could be 32 weeks, could be 54 weeks, depending on what the ASO tells us. We have to get to stage 2 of 6 at the grid interconnection, and then we apply to the AUC. In between all of this, you'll see on the bottom, there's a yellow line that says public consultation process. We don't stop consulting with the public as soon as we file with the AUC. In fact, the AUC asks us to maintain a consultation registry through the life of the project. Our obligation is to operate this project responsibly, and we have to report periodically to both the ASO and to the AUC on how we're operating it and how the project is performing, including 3 years of post-construction environmental monitoring. At the beginning of this project, before we even turn the ground, we have to assess the soil on the site. So we take soil samples, which we're going to use for the agronomy purposes as well, to see what other things can be grown on the land other than grazing cattle. Price family is not actively farming. They're looking at this for residual income. This income will provide them with significant income through their retirement years, and they don't have to sell the property, which is what they were considering beforehand. So divesting themselves of an asset so they can live in their retirement years. It's now been replaced by essentially our version of a pension fund for them. So where we're at with this is once we've completed these studies and we receive the AUC application, we will finalize the engineering design. We have to file our final. This is the panels you're using. This is the inverters you're using. Nothing is, or we say nothing has changed from the application. And then they say, go ahead, we start construction. That'll take about 3 to 6 months, depending on what time of year it is. If we're finished at the end of the year, we will work through, because it's so close to town here and people can come and go from the project in inclement weather, as opposed to Youngstown, where we'll shut down for two weeks if we have bad weather because drifting snow and there's no place to stay in Youngstown. So people have to drive an hour and a half. It's not very productive in the wintertime. But when you're close and inside an urban area, you have a population that could be employed from that. And so your workers, or some of your workers, don't have to drive very far and don't lose as many man days during the winter. We expect that by Q4 of 2023, we would be able to at least start roads, fencing, or procuring materials, and then we would go hard and heavy into this in 2024. If anybody's interested, I know it's a bit of a ways, but you can drive up the road to Youngstown. When you get to the Youngstown intersection by the subdivision, you just turn right, go down 1.5 miles on the left-hand side, and you'll see Youngstown Solar being constructed. There are driving piles as we speak. So that's the schedule. Public engagement, we have to consult. So eyes wide open on this project. If I did this project in the, out where Sheerness is, I think I'd have less than 50 stakeholders that I have to consult with. Those are people within 800 meters of the project, people on the project, the mine, the municipalities, and then anyone else from the community who wants information as a stakeholder. But technically, I have to physically consult with people within 400 meters. When I look at an urban community, my consultation list goes to like 500 people that we literally have to door knock, send registered letters to, try to get on the phone, try to communicate email wise. That's what Rhonda does. She literally goes to those, she'll come into the community and she'll knock on the door and try to engage people, or she'll try and phone them and find them in the, that's not so easy now because nobody has, I wish they would come up with a mobile phone book, because it used to be real easy to look up somebody's phone number. You get 50% of the people easily on the white pages. Now you can't get anything. So it takes us a long time. Eyes wide open. We know there's more public consultation when we do an urban project, but we're not afraid to do that. We will do that several ways. We do it through the media. Brooks Solar, when it was built, we held a public, we went to the council first. We then had a public open house. Then we had it was on CBC Canada, Calgary Eye Opener, and Edmonton Good Morning on the same day. And then Brooks Bulletin wrote a newspaper article about it, and then CBC wrote up. So there's a lot of interest on what we're trying to do in urban projects. But it's sometimes press that we buy. We'll put an ad in the paper, but most often it's just press coverage from trying to keep people informed. And so we put out print and radio press releases that update people paid ads in the local newspaper. We will have multiple public information and consultation sessions. In the wintertime, we like to do virtual consultations. I've done consultations, 3 public open houses in Hannah, and I've had anywhere from 4 to 10 people show up. I'll do a webinar and I'll have 225 people. So much better engagement. People sit in the comfort of their living room. They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to rush out from supper. It allows for people to look at it while they're working, even if they want to. And we do it at different times of the day. We do them on Saturdays when people are at home. We do them at night. And then, of course, the personal consultations, what I talked about with Rhonda. What we're consulting about is the result of our study. So as we get these studies done, we will put them up. And the last thing is that we have a web page that will be designed specifically for Hannah. And one of the things we're looking for is a name for this project. We could just call it Hannah Airport Solar Project, but maybe there's something more significant to the community that is more fitting.
Harvest Sky.
Well, there you go, Harvest Sky Solar, but I don't steal the name. So, it could be related to what the Agplex gets called. But we are looking for a name. In the meantime, we'll just call it Hannah Airport Solar to distinguish it from Hannah Sheerness. And that's it. Okay, questions?
Daryl?
The first one there was, have you guys contacted AHS about, talk to the pilots about landing in this? Because
Talking about Alberta Health Services.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll all be part of that consultation. Helipads are part of that consultation as well. Anything that involves aeronautics within 3.5 kilometers of the airport. So we also have to know where the private strips are. So we go to the public and say, and the municipality and say, do you know whether or not Farmer Joe has a unregistered grass strip that he's landing on? That's required for us to try and find that information. AUC actually specifies that we have to go and hunt. It's very difficult because they're unlicensed and they're unregistered. They're for private use, but we have to make the attempt to find out.
because we don't want to lose our ambulance.
No, and the projects that we're doing, we've done already, that's not an issue.
Are you allowed to say what other suitable sites that you selected? I mean, I understand why you chose this site. There's
Sure, we looked at
certainly-
the industrial lands, or the lands behind the commercial development over by the seniors residence. We looked at a piece of property in the northwest. And then we looked at this property, we looked at the property across the road. But basically, inside the urban boundary, you're trying to find a big enough chunk that doesn't have a higher and better use. Right,
Okay.
so the problem with the stuff on the right side, we almost had a lease signed with that landowner, and then he decided he wanted to sell the property. And then from a homeowner impact, all of those houses face the solar array, or would face the solar array. So you'd have a lot of people that would be upset about view shed, property value devaluation of which there's no proof of. But these are concerns. And so when you look at, getting a project permitted, this side is all about commercial development and agriculture. So we're not really disturbing residential. We're not disturbing the park-like features around the lake because we have to stay back. And so, yeah, we actually did that as part of our community generation capacity building, was look for places, particularly was for the discussions with the town about the use of solar to power its buildings, its municipal buildings.
So what's the requirement? You seem really attracted to inside urban boundary. Like, is that different for you or just easier to get?
Oh, no, it's not. I just said it's not easier to get.
Yeah.
We have 100 times the number of people we have to consult with, so it's way more complicated public consultation process. We believe that people should be able to look at a solar array and say, okay, that's where my electricity comes from. And my electricity is coming from a renewable energy source. And so my municipality is contributing to sustainable development. Those are important things as we move forward, because the amount of electricity we're going to need between now and 2050. So this is a 30-year lease with up to a 20-year extension. So it could be 50 years that the solar is there. Would the same solar equipment be there? Probably not. It'd probably get repowered halfway through its life with more efficient equipment, which is the modus operandi for the industry. But really, it's a perfect place. It's a perfect piece of land. Again, there isn't a huge demand in Hannah, and there's lots. This is one of the things that we have to do. This is our assumption. This is our thesis going into this, is that this is the best use for this land. We will prepare a planning document for council that will look at your long-term planning document, will look at your inventory of lots, both industrial, commercial, and residential, and then basically put it in front of you that, you know, this land, which is now generating a few $100s a year in taxes, will generate between $250,000 and $350,000, depending on the size of the project, when we're done in municipal taxes. And that's based on what Brooks pays, what Innisfail pays. We hire a tax consultant, our private tax assessment company, who prepares a tax proposal for the municipality, and then your assessor, who you hire to do your assessment, will go through it. But both of these entities are guided by the same driving principles, which is the municipal guidelines put out by municipal affairs. So, or whatever the ministry is called these days. But it's a very complex depreciation schedule, location schedule in the province, and that goes against your mill rate for what the property is assessed for. Realizing, of course, that agricultural activities will still continue on this property. We are not changing the land use.
Are you making any long-term plans to maybe expand outside of the urban area on this site?
No, the grid's full. When we put this project on, we would put as much energy as there's capacity for it. Unless they do something with upgrading the distribution system, which is not likely with ATCO. This would be the extent of our work inside here.
Or increasing the technology of the solar panels to be more,
You still have to get it to the wires. Unless they do something to change the wires. Now, in looking at what Harvest Sky wants to do as well, it may change by 1 or 2 megawatts if we try to service their building, but we would put that power through their facility, and then it would go to the grid after they use whatever they need to use. And the same goes for the airport. We could tie the airport buildings. I don't know who owns the airport. I have no idea.
Town
Who does? So the town does. So you would look at that, and could we make the airport sustainable as part of the project? My answer would be yes. That would be the best time to do it, because we could do it at what we pay for solar and what you would pay for a small project is like 50%, because we're buying hundreds of megawatts of equipment at the same time. So best time to do that.
Do you have any other airports that you know of, smaller airports like this in the same situation?
We will be preparing the list as part of our submission. I looked at this in depth when we were engaged. We actually won a $2 million municipal climate change award to actually design 2 megawatts of solar on the airport roof, car park solar, and then looking at building on some of the aprons actually at the airport as an experiment to what airport solar could look like. And then the Conservatives were elected and they yanked all the funding from MCCA. We didn't get to do it, which is unfortunate, but
You'll have to forgive us, but we don't, there's not much support for provincial federal entities and relying on them for our best interest.
We
We've been burned
don't-
by that.
so I should say right now, it has been our history. There is no provincial or federal money coming into this project for us.
It's the regulations to protect us that we don't have faith in. We've been burned by that before.
Yeah.
insurance.
Okay. I appreciate that, but this is private investment, privately funded, no government subsidy. There is no government subsidy that I'm aware of, actually,
And
and
it's not, the question's not around subsidies, Claude, it's more just, I guess, confidence that, AUC, whoever's gonna be providing the approval process is gonna make sure that there is not gonna be any issues or concerns for our community, and I think primarily at this point in time, we've had concerns raised from our local pilots, that we want to make sure that if it does go ahead, that their concerns are addressed and, satisfactory, and can we rely on, I guess, to ensure that happens.
My response to that would be, the AEC is all about technical review. It's not subjective in any way, shape, or form. They are the experts. They are the public body that's been set in place by the municipal act to look at this. I don't think any community has the technical skills, nor anyone in that community that surpass what the AEC does. And I've been doing this since 2003 in Alberta. One of the first wind guys to relocate on the east side of the province. Everybody said, there's no wind over there. Now you cannot lease a foot outside of the land that we leased for our original wind farm. And they're actually building more wind farms. They're building more wind farms in Central East than they are anywhere else in the province. And that's because the winds are better and more consistent. They come on later in the day when we need power. And as you move up north on the Saskatchewan-Alberta boundary, you get a time shift of about 4 hours in the wind from Pincher Creek. So literally, Pincher Creek comes on, and as the wind moves across the province, swings back into Saskatchewan and comes back at us. And the amount of light that reflects on people driving down the highway, just as important as pilots, is minimal. It's yellow light, and I've never seen one that says that it's going to impact a helicopter pilot or the highway. So we design them so they don't. That's literally the issue for us.
So I don't know if council has any questions. Mr. Mayor, you have a question?
Yeah, a couple actually. The comment about minimal carbon footprint. I struggle a little bit with it. The panels themselves have to be manufactured, the construction has to happen. Panels have to arrive, so on and so forth. So I mean, I understand the actual operation itself having zero to but there's always a carbon footprint with anything. The second one is, we've got a letter from a concerned resident, and again, it was an approved project. The town of Hoyan, Stars refused to land due to an oversight, I'll call it. There was some wind towers put in close to the runway, and they're not in operation yet, and so Stars had no means of landing. So they were deemed it's the terminology I want to use here. Deemed unlandable or unsafe, so it's they were without Stars for a short period of time. During construction, again, I don't know what the process is, but obviously there's cranes, there's pile drivers, there's whatever there needs to be to assemble these. How high is that, like when they're in operation? I understand, but during construction, is that going to be an issue?
Well, I would put it akin to a high low.
Okay,
Like the pile drivers are 18, 20 feet.
okay, and that's fine.
And there's no cranes. I mean, we use telescoping zoom booms to unload everything.
Okay.
The only cranes that we use are, would be like a normal 25-ton crane that would lift the inverters off. They're the heaviest load.
Okay.
So there's really little, I mean, the biggest piece of equipment we have is the pile driver.
Okay.
I was gonna try and find a presentation for you that I actually can demonstrate. So in our in our, you can get this off of our website, but in our, in our Q&A that's on our website, you will find a section that deals with decommissioning, how we're doing it, how we're paying for it, when we agree to it. And issues like view shed, how we're trying to manage it, what view shed really means, what are your rights for view shed, all of these things are public education, they're on our website. One of the things that we did from public consultation is the same question about how much energy it takes to go into building solar components as compared to nuclear, so on and so forth. So we have a really great slide that shows you, other than wind, because of the size of the turbine, now 5.6 megawatts, that the next lowest impact over the cradle to grave lifetime. So you make it, you mine it, you make it, you use it, you decommission it, you recycle it. Solar is next to wind, and all other forms of generation are this way, including coal, nuclear, massive amounts of concrete. The biggest, one of the biggest by sector contributors to greenhouse gases is cement. Making clinker, making cement powder produces massive amounts of CO2 because you're basically mining calcium carbonate and then busting it up. So nothing is without a carbon impact. We fully understand that, but that slide clearly demonstrates from an unimpeachable source that solar has less impact than any other form, including hydro. So.
No, and that's fine, Cliff, it's just,
I'm not,
I work in the oil and gas industry.
yep,
So when I see this zero impact or minimal impact, and I know with the wind, I'd almost argue with the number of trucks and activity and where the components all come from, the costs, and I mean, it's dollars and cents costs, but and with greenhouse, we
Yeah.
apply green credits and so on. And so
yeah,
forth.
but to be fair, we built our highways so we can bring these massive modulars,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Those massive modulars come from China, in some cases, straight up from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Right, so again, factored into that, because it was based on a huge study that was done in the nineties in Europe, that everybody contributed to, Canada and the US as well, as to what the cradle to grave impact was for using energy, all forms of it, natural gas, oil. And what they included in that significantly is the transportation, what we call scope 1 emissions of getting something to the site. And then scope 3, which is getting something from the site, right? So oil and gas has got scope 1, 2 is scope 2 emissions are what they do in the middle to make their oil and gas operations, right? So scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, all of those are included in the full wrap of this analysis.
Perfect. No, I just,
No, and I'm not, I don't,
That document that you were.
Well, Claude had forwarded to council earlier.
I looked through it.
If that's the one you were trying to find, Claude, would be this document here.
yes.
So we have it, probably Lori would be able to bring it up for you.
I just.
The link will be, so again, folks, we are just getting started.
yeah,
So we
no,
wanted to gauge what council was concerned
I'm
about.
excited.
So our goal is that web page, which is, so we just type in Hannah Airport Solar, up will come a functional web page that is maintained statically, so that as information is released, it goes to that web page. So it's the best available information. And then there'll be links to the frequently asked questions. Then there's a public education piece. So I work for PACE, but I work for PACE as a consultant. So I have a consulting firm. I do presentations to councils. I'm doing 3 presentations in the next 2 months to councils that have nothing to do with my projects. That don't have a project. They've asked me to come in because somebody's visited one of our open houses and likes the way that we do the education piece. So we'll do this little presentation that's specific to the project and who we are. And then we have another project that deals with all those issues that have been identified by the public through years of consultation. So we talk about view shed, we talk about how we're decommissioning, we talk about how we're paying for the decommissioning, we talk about impact on your taxes. And we have gone out of our way to find what's called peer-reviewed data. So that's data that's been reviewed by other experts who have reviewed a paper that was published and agree with its conclusions. And so we don't give you something that some solar developer wrote in the US about why real estate isn't impacted by my solar development. We go to studies that were done by government agencies or NGOs that actually support what we're talking about. And I wanted to pull up this presentation, but we probably don't have time. But again, we prepared this public education piece, which has nothing to do with our projects. It just talks about how the solar industry is responsible and has taken on the issues of decommissioning. So in our, just to speak of one that's everybody's concerned about because of the orphan well fund issue. We, in our lease, we have two ways of paying for decommissioning that's selected by the landowner. One is a letter of credit, which you all understand. If you have your own private lines of credit, a letter of credit is a line of credit from a bank that guarantees that is set up specifically for decommissioning. Or we have a bond. So if you've done public works, you know what bonding companies are all about. And so we do an A-rated bank, or we do an A-rated bonding company who upgrades the cost of decommissioning every 5 years. We do another study. Just like you're a condo corporation, you have to look at your reserve fund. We look at a reserve fund analysis for what it's costing us for decommissioning based on current pricing. And that's what we fund with this letter of credit or with this bond. It's right in our lease. We don't have a clause that says, okay, we're going to decommission per the Alberta Environment and Protected Areas decommissioning for renewable energy projects, which is a 13-page document that says what we have to do when we decommission. We actually have a plan. And I consult for another company called Sunset Renewables, which is specifically looking at and is operating in Ontario, recycling wind turbine blades and recycling solar panels. So we've figured it out before we even get there. We're hopefully 30 to 50 years away from having to look at that recycling, but we've already figured it out. And 90% of everything that we put in a solar project is recyclable, either for reuse or going back into the input stream, full wrap recycling.
Councilor Warwick, I see you twitching there a little bit.
She's
Yes,
on.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Claude. This is Angie Warwick. Claude, I just have one question, just from reading through some of the documentation on agriculture use. I know that you've identified in here that it's smaller animal usage like sheep grazing and stuff like that. So is this land usable, or can it be used for cattle grazing, horse grazing, you know, buffalo, that kind of stuff when those solar plant panels are present?
Well, if you've, I'm a former rancher and farmer. I had 840 acres or 640 acres in Tilly that I farmed for 8 years. Cows are not friendly to scratching their butt on anything. So we are looking at ways to strengthen the racking system, moving the racking system up a couple of feet so that we can look at large animals. But grazing isn't the only use for this land. We're going to, as I said, work with Olds College to develop a best farming practices for this piece of land. It may be that what the landowners want to do is rent it out to somebody who has a herd of sheep. There's a lack of sheep pasture in Alberta. You know, none of our open ranges or our community pastures actually allow for sheep. They're all for cattle. So we have no problem finding somebody with sheep to come in here and graze this off. But that wouldn't be my first choice. My first choice would be to look at continuing more intensive agriculture, maybe haying the land or doing some cereal grains, even growing seed crops, which Olds has a program for financing its college where it grows strains of hybrid dryland barley and triticale, and they're always looking for other acres to put seed into. So there's lots of options for us, but we'll figure that out as we go forward, and we will have a solid plan for agronomy at the end of our public consultation for people to look at. This isn't just talking about what we might do. This is what we're going to do.
Thank you, Claude. That was the only question I had.
Any others? Senator John Murphy.
When you talk about wind, I think that's when all of my confidence in your company fades a little bit, only because if you drive through Halkirk, that beautiful little community has been destroyed by people who showed up in a room just like this and promised the world and stuck it to them, because that community has been destroyed by wind farms. So when you say wind farms and then you say solar, we won't cause you any problems. We don't live here, So it's easy for you to promise the world because you go home to no wind farms, no solar panels in your backyard. What's important to us here in Hannah is that you don't do that.
Mm.
So we're gonna call you to task when you say something that doesn't happen.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
And I hope you understand that when we call you to task, it's not gonna be pleasant. Because we have been put through the ringer very recently by another company who sat just like you did and promised the world and is sticking it to us. So when you talk wind farms, I get nervous.
Mm.
There is no such thing as a nice wind farm. They should all be in the middle of the Northwest Territories where there's nothing but seals looking at them. And the fact that they're all over Alberta now, it's of no benefit to us. So it makes me nervous.
Mm.
And I'm not the only one. When you blend wind farms with sun, it's not cool because the wind farms are awful. They're god awful. They're terrible to look at. They impact the environment. There's a big difference between wind and solar.
Mhm.
And, when bats are exploding because they're flying by it, it's a problem to me. Whether or not you find that funny, I
No,
don't.
no, ma'am.
don't.
What I'm saying, first of all, I do take a little bit of umbrage with your assumption that, there's one thing that you basically have to sell once in your life, it's an integrity.
Yeah.
I still get calls from landowners in Ontario where I developed wind farms 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's one of the first wind farm developers in Ontario. None of my projects in Ontario created the uproar that other developers, and I cringe at some of the practices of wind developers. I think they're their own worst enemy because they are not honest. They play landowner. Ron is there. Ron will tell you horror stories about wind developers down in, that's what he does, is landowner. He manages the community and the impact of developers who don't do it properly. To us, the most important person, and I've been saying this, which is why landowners who have nothing to do with 20 years later, call me up and say, what do you think about this developer? And ask me questions. Hutter Colonies, who I worked with, and two other developers call me and ask me, because I give them the straight dope and the honesty. It's part of my passion. I'm not here to tell you stories. I'm telling you what we're going to do, what our thesis is. Do I know the end from the beginning at this point in time? I absolutely do not. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this public consultation. I hope that when we're done, we can prove that this is the best thing for the, yes, I'm somewhat not objective to my own agenda because this is what I do, right? But I'm also a former farmer. I have owned a small family business for most of my life. Learned all I learned from the end of a shovel. I'm not an engineer. Went back to school and spent 25 years getting a degree in biology. So the issue for me is, I think this is the best thing for your community. That's my opinion. I've been in this community for 4 years, trying to gauge this. When I talk about wind, we were talking specifically about Sheerness, which is out in the middle of nowhere. And Sheerness, the goal with the larger wind farm at Sheerness is not just to make electricity, it's to make large scale hydrogen, which the Sheerness gas plant will need to survive the next iteration. So they've converted to gas. Now they have a bunch of carbon credits that they can use up while they burn gas. Eventually, they're going to need fuel with hydrogen. And we're preparing to build a very large wind and solar facility on the 10,000 acres they're currently reclaiming. 3 to 5 years from now, I believe that we can fit wind and solar on that site. Yes, the community in Sheerness, the little tiny community of Sheerness, is probably going to be the ones that most significantly impacted, and the people looking around it, but because it's largely special areas, public lands that surround us, there's nobody living there. So if you're talking about human conflict, the other large scale solar projects that we're building, transmission wise, are again out in the middle of nowhere. And, Hutterite Colony is hosting. You got a Hutterite Colony that we're working with right now that cannot get enough power for their new colony from the grid. And it will cost them $30 million to build a line to them. So they're honestly looking at wind and solar so that they can power this colony where 90 people are going to live. Right. So our solutions, I can't comment, although, literally, I don't know the issues that you're dealing with, but I do know the issues in the industry. We treat everybody exactly the same. We go in with a lease that we think is fair, and we do not change it from one landowner to the next, to the next. We don't pit landowners against one another, and we certainly don't try to force ourselves on a community. If in the end, the community says, we don't want to host this project, we'll say, fine, it's been nice trying to work with you, we will go somewhere else. Because, you know, that's not the way to begin a relationship. I think in the end, we can find a beautiful way to synergistically use this land for all the different users while helping this community maintain its tax base.
I think Ron has a comment in the back corner.
I just wanted to mention that one of the problems that we run into all the time is that around here, for many, especially north and south of here, a lot of lease land, we're not allowed, you can build a mine on lease, you can build any kind of gas and oil facility you want, you can do anything on lease land. You can't put solar panels or windmills on lease, not where nobody lives. And it's an Alberta government problem, really.
And as far as going north, you cannot build anything on crown land anywhere. There is actually 900 megawatts of capacity going up to Grand Prairie and going up to Fort McMurray. But you can't build up there because it's crown land and there is no crown land disposition for renewable energy. And we have, myself, I have pushed Alberta Environment and Protected Areas to simply change the miscellaneous lease to allow for renewable energy. Oil and gas companies, Crescent Point is a good example, was trying to do something in Fox Creek where they have huge environmental impacts with tight oil and fracking and earthquakes and all the rest of the stuff. They tried to do solar at all their sites. They got federal money to do this from the last federal government. And they can't spend it because they can't find any land that's coincident with where their operations are. They were allowed to drill well pads there. And these well pads use a ton of electricity, as you know. They can't reduce their electrical cost, which makes them more profitable because there's no policy that says you can build 2 acres of, I worked for 5 years for Big Steam. And my last job was dewatering Fort Hills. Literally 20,000 hectares of land, ground boreal forest, just ground up. And then we went in and all we did was take the water out of the oil sands so that they could actually process it. So you want to talk about where you can go up there, you can punch it, you can bore it, you can mine it for aggregates, you can clear cut the trees, you cannot do anything with it. I know oil and gas companies that had wanted to give me well pad or entire pads for oil sands that they weren't going to develop that anymore. They had cleared it, they had brushed it, they had gravelled it, they had fenced it, they had brought the power to it. It was literally ready for a 30 megawatt solar project until they found out can't do that because this is all leased land. So when you look at it, we actually prepared a paper, again, a peer-reviewed paper on Alberta land policy as it relates to agrivoltaics. If we're going to build this, if we're going to power our communities with renewable energy sustainably and predictably and resiliently so that it's always there, we have to do things like hydrogen, we have to do batteries, we have to do the full thing, we have to look at wind, we have to look at solar, and we also have to look at that with gas and with hydro and, you know, even small modular reactors, which I honestly have no faith that they'll be able to deliver those cost effectively, or fission reactions, whatever, you know. The issue is there's lots of things that you could do at some point in time in the future. What Hannah can do today to help themselves is to build solar.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering if we could take a few minutes to allow some of our pilots to ask a question if they have any.
Absolutely. Love to hear from you.
The only
Just wondering if there's
the only concern I have, Councilor Boat, is I know that you guys probably have a ton of questions, so whether, and I did see this document, and certainly I will pass this on to Claude to look at, to review. I guess I'm trying to gather some input for myself, so as part of the, obviously, we know that our pilots have concerns, Claude, with solar in the vicinity.
Yep.
How are their concerns, questions best addressed? This probably isn't the best place to address them, but because you're just starting the project, and I know you have to do a glint and glare study. do they, like, what opportunities will they have to, because I imagine they
best
could probably
platform?
tie you up for a couple hours
Well, that's fine.
just
That's what we
talking
do.
about that, and this is probably not the time and place, but would that be a possibility of how we could?
Yeah, so what I would suggest we would do is we would have a meeting, a webinar. Largely because I'm gonna bring people in from Calgary to do this. Have a webinar with the group. I mean, they obviously made the effort to come here today, so getting together on we can discuss timing and dates. Whatever information they want to give us that we can review, we're happy to look at that. But I would suggest that that conversation be held with our engineering consultant, GreenCap Renewables, who is doing the glare study. I think the most effective way to do this is to identify, because I can publish a glare report that will satisfy the FAA, but there may be very unique conditions for local use, local navigation systems, that literally we need to be made aware of. And so the best way to do that is to engage with your group and have this webinar and have you be able to talk to the engineer and express your concerns so that he can, if he wasn't going to address it in his study, it can be addressed. Particularly.
Yeah, I just
And
wanted to,
usage is a big one, you know, which strips get used at what time of day, typically the use case, and it can be changed. One of our, in my previous company, the first wind development company that I did, my local community land agent, actually built the Collingwood Airport. And we used to fly in his small planes all over Ontario and look at our projects from the sky. And he was very, like, he wanted to put solar all around the airport that he built from scratch, and eventually Collingwood bought the airport from him. So I've had a lot of experience with this, even with wind. And wind was the big one because, you know, wind turbines close to an airport can create more of a conflict than glinted glare.
so, yeah, that's my concern. I think that's probably.
I think it's best as a special meeting.
Concern of council is we want to make sure that our pilots have had opportunity to have their questions, concerns,
Yeah.
listened to, responded to, and, you know, hopefully in the big picture, responded to satisfactorily, that they can leave feeling comfortable that if this did proceed, it's not gonna have a negative impact on their ability to use the airport.
Yep.
And I think, and I can't speak for council, but I know this group will want to have a comfort level from their pilots who are local residents that are comfortable with the process that's happened. They're satisfied. If we go through that process and they're still not satisfied, that will certainly have a big impact on council's willingness to want to move forward. So I think we need to address those concerns.
Yeah, again, because I have a little bit more information and education at looking at this, I'm positive that we can do what's called impact mitigation. So we can mitigate any of the negative impacts to make this effective.
Okay.
That being said, I do not have that information, but I'm happy to take their questions and concerns. Flight is very technical, so they'll appreciate the technical approach as opposed to, you know, subjective opinion of, you know, what we come up with. That's why we hire. So when we hire biologists, when we hire engineers, they have a code of practice. They are considered experts. This is what the AUC, this is what AEP looks for. Can they form an opinion that is based on facts, figures, science, and what is their opinion? We don't influence those decisions. We don't make this stuff up. We hire people who are experts, and their credentials and their code of conduct is what governs them. So APEGA has a code of conduct, right? So it's not like because we're hiring them, somehow we influence what they do, right? And then the next level is you've got engineers and biologists at the AUC and AEP that are reviewing what we do. We have no influence over them. We give them information and they make a decision.
I wonder, I have an extra copy.
So sure, I'm happy to take.
I wonder if I can present it, and there's Jeff Fortna is in the gallery. And would you be willing to kind of communicate back and forth to organize it with your pilot group?
Yeah, I think that's best, because it's gonna be
It'll
a
take a while.
fairly lengthy conversation, I would imagine. And it will be above my head in terms of not a pilot. I don't know what issues, concerns you guys have, and so I'll leave that with Jeff. Claude, I have Claude's contact information too, so we can certainly set something up as a one-off to deal with that with the pilots.
Does that work with you guys? You guys can talk to Jeff.
Yeah, well, yeah. I just think that's best than trying to, because I know it could become quite a lengthy conversation between you guys and Claude and his team, so.
No, this is great. This is a wonderful starting point. Like, we're all about engagement. I mean, we need people to engage, right? Sitting back and sniping about it, or, commenting on, I hate social media for the fact that it is the worst thing for propagating red herrings and social myth. People, we're so approachable. We literally, we're not here to change your mind. We're here to give you information and you can form your own educated opinion. But I'd much rather be educated than people just saying, oh, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that, and it's not based on math or science.
And then they'll understand what you're saying and that sort of
Yep.
thing. So that would be great.
No, and just looking at the first 5 items, they're all legitimate concerns. I mean,
Perfect,
let's just talk.
perfect.
And I'm happy, again, we've engaged the engineer to do the glare studies. He hasn't done them. He hasn't even started yet because I have to have a layout for him to do it. Right? So eventually what we'll do is, I will engage with him before I leave here and try and set up some dates,
Okay.
pull them into a discussion. It's easy, Zoom, Google, whatever. And again, picking this site, our eyes are wide open. We knew this is not going to be the easiest thing, but we do think it's a great use for this land if we can make it work.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nothing else? Can you get a motion to thank representatives from Case Canada LP for their presentation on the potential solar project in Tongahana corporate limits adjacent to the airport? Councilor Thurl, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claude.
Thank you, guys.
And Ron.
Yes.
Always quietly in the
I was
corner.
back, yeah.
And thank you, pilots, for
Thanks.
coming. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, yeah. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
The jury has till 10 o'clock.
Yes, sorry about that.
All right, next we have the links update. Gary, Mark,
Come with.
you're not gonna make us stand by yourself, are you, Mark?
Boy, that cleared out the old room, eh? They flew out of here.
I have a medical appointment in Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Yeah, safe travels.
Floor is yours to rate.
Okay, excellent. So I looked back quick, thought, geez, it seems like I was just here for a
July,
chat.
right?
July 27th.
This is not long.
It has. So thanks a million for inviting me to have just a casual chat update today. We were in the process in July of just having our amalgamation and renaming be approved. So yeah, we are approved through the province and through CRA with our amalgamation name change. We are now in the process of working through some red tape with CRA on our charitable status. So yeah, we sent them information in September and we got reply January 5th. That needs more information. So we'll work on that. But branding is done and we've been doing some soft launching of marketing and branding. We have our new arena sign back up, deckled and back up in the arena. Looks pretty great. Our brochures, our website, getting lots of great feedback on our website with our brand refresh and lots of comments back from patrons that why'd you change your name? And I said, well, I think we all outgrew it. And they're like, well, you did more than learning the stuff. And I'm like, yeah, we did more than learning stuff. Maybe that was a good idea. Okay, thanks.
It's just so hard to get your head wrapped around.
I don't do change well.
Things from HL, you're so used to HLC for so many years,
Yeah.
it's so hard to get your head.
And we will be HLC
Yeah.
probably for 35 years.
Like the new subdivision.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or the Red Rooster.
Yeah.
Right, like, yeah, but no, it's going really good. So I did bring just a little bit of our brand story. I'll just leave behind if anybody's interested and, you know, of some of the reason where we came from with our logo and our name, and our purpose, vision, key value points, and a few brochures. Now, we still have our core departments. So we have our community learning and literacy, our business services, our career and employment, and our connecting community. So those are our core departments that all of our programs, projects fit under. We've had some new changes to our career contract. So now we have a pretty exciting opportunity that we have dollars set aside specifically for employers to use for development, training, and possible safety equipment for new employees. So it's pretty exciting. It's fairly new that we have this opportunity to be working not only with employees. We've always worked with employers, but now we have a different level of resources and services we can provide. So more of a just a step above some of the services that we could offer before. Business services. So, you know, we have not secured additional funding to keep the current business hub team staff. So when the concierge, so when Tammy was hired, when Sam was hired, it was, you know, the term of the federal funding. We did get that extended a little bit. Originally, that was supposed to be completed in August, and we've now extended it to March. March is right around the corner. I have not secured dollars to have the same services and activities being offered. My business hub team also has, you know, life career plans different than the continuation of working full-time at our satellite center at the business hub. So we're working through that to see what that looks like in the future. Work very closely with Mark and Harvest Sky Economic Development, have conversations with him, with Jordan. Some of that, we still have a little messy time to go through. Other staff transition, well, Levi as part of the business hub team as well. We're negotiating with Business Link currently to have that contract extended from April 2023 to September 2024 is supposedly when they have federal provincial dollars. It's not signed yet, but we're working on that. We do have some other staff transitions. So in our career services department, Debbie moved to Youngstown Special Areas office. So her commute now is 10 minutes versus the 45 that she did for 5 years. So we wish her well, completely understand that change. And it's a win for her for sure. Tracy Morgan is taking a pharmacy tech position with Heather at Pharmacy. So we have 2 jobs posted, those 2 jobs posted. Sorry, Taylor moved into Debbie's position. We have a program assistant and career and learning position posted. So we'll be having some new staff coming on board. With community learning, so our CALP, if you've ever heard me talk in the crazy acronyms that we do. So Community Adult Learning Program that has forever been funded by Advanced Education has been moved out of that ministry. So we are in a new ministry of trade skills and professions. We've had a meeting just this past week. Doesn't seem that there's going to be significant changes for the program with the change of moving it to the new ministry. We'll wait and see on that one. Maybe back up just a step to business hub services with operations of the BIC for the past 2 seasons was done under my team. So changing that up again and how the tourism is, one of the key pillars of Harbour Sky Economic Development. Mark has applied for Canada Summer Jobs grants for seasonal students. So that is fantastic.
So the bottom line on PIC is that it will look different than last year and the town will be much more possibly involved in the
Well,
operations.
especially if Mark's serving ice cream.
Hey, just don't eat it all.
So that's something that Learning Center, the business hub taken over has certainly links has been a benefit to the town. We may, again, as we move forward and in discussions as to what that's gonna look like, how it's gonna look, there may be some additional responsibilities and additional costs that will be borne by the town that we haven't had to for the last 2 years, so.
And that should have been a benefit, having them look after that.
It's been really great.
I think, well, I
Yeah,
think
it's been
for.
really great.
Yeah, no, it's certainly saved it saved us some dollars right off the hop, but it's also saved us on resources and staff time that we haven't had to put towards it. So so there is an impact coming down the road on that. We just don't know how full that impact is gonna be. So we're working through that process, so.
And then just the last thing before, open up for questions, and Claude shared a little bit of lots of work that the AIG project committee and subcommittees have been working on. We definitely very impressed with the work we've done thus far with the architect team, Reimagine. And we're looking forward to next steps. The group has come together and built a roadmap of our next 3 years of activities. Our next meeting is this coming Tuesday at Link's Boardroom. And we're going to have some past CIA members come and do a high-level presentation of local fundraising that we did when we did the Centennial Place project and pool and skate parking,
Yeah.
So the momentum and the motion is really great there. We had neighbors from Boyan Egg Center, their Egg Society, Bronc Match committee members, Handles Lake Stampede committee members come be part of that functional conversation for the event center. So it was we were really gracious of them to share their time and, feedback of, yeah, this works great. If we could do it all over again, we do this. This doesn't work great. It was a very productive meeting. And the next night is when we were able to build that, draft site plan. So it's pretty exciting. You don't see it so much on that visual because the rural community practice doesn't need very much space, but it was up in the corner, and the event center, of course, needs more of a footprint. And we're really mindful of sharing that it is those 2 pieces of the project. And the event center is so much more than that riding arena. I think that, when we have the opportunity to be in the community and chatting with everybody openly, not just the champions that are involved, that know all the moving pieces and that, it's much more than, you know, a riding arena for Cowboys, right? So to be able to share all the diversity that that facility and event center can be used for is gonna be pretty exciting.
And the plan on that is to have the group here to provide that information, provide a presentation. We kind of targeted this day, but just timing wise, they're not quite at a point where they've got everything final.
Well, they've had some new pieces that they're working on out of line of when they thought they would be working on,
So hopefully it will be in the near future that we'll be able to have that group here to provide you more details. I know, probably a month ago when council was sent that information from Claude out of the blue about the solar farm. I was concerned because I knew that was their priority site but I know Mark and Claude have met on a couple occasions and the groups I'm pleased and I'm optimistic that whether either project goes ahead, there's been the conversation and discussion that if they are both gonna move ahead, that they look like they can coexist and work together, which when I first saw it, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it's moving in the right direction at this point in time.
Yeah, Claude,
So ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, and Claude had a couple of things he was jumping the gun on. The architects haven't applied for a green grant yet. They're working to build the center in a way that could be, and there's two terms, there's net zero, but then net carbon zero or something,
net carbon ready.
net carbon ready or something, so there's different.
I love terminology.
Yeah, so Claude was off on a couple of things that haven't applied for the grant. The grant might not be a net zero grant, it might be a net carbon ready grant, which is different levels of funding and stuff like that. As far as the site plan is very, very preliminary. I mean, we did spend a whole evening going over it and there's, you know, hopefully it would look like that, but not there yet.
Reality.
Reality and size and of course, what, I mean, Claude, they have the land
Secured.
secured, so I mean, we haven't even had, that was basically, they got that map yesterday, so we don't even know if they're gonna give us those acres or how many acres we need.
But I would think,
And tying,
this is my premise, I would think that Claude wouldn't have
I agree.
showed it or talked about it. if he
Absolutely.
Didn't think it was
Yeah.
feasible.
Because something like that could come back and bite you.
Yeah.
Hard.
yeah, and the other, what was the other one I was gonna say? Oh, and just how much we tie into the solar
Yeah.
and stuff is we haven't even had that discussion with him yet. So, I mean, definitely conversations and like you said, good conversations. But some of the stuff he said was a little jumping the gun.
Pie in the sky.
But that would be a huge opportunity to be able to secure a power source that is nearby, that could be considerably cheaper than getting it
As
somewhere
long
else.
as it's viable.
And, yes, exactly, and with Old College, perhaps working with them, maybe they set up a site or a
Well,
space.
feeds all right
And,
into
yeah.
the rural community practice, the
Exactly, yeah,
research.
perfect. So.
You know, all the pieces are definitely coming together. There's lots of
They're
momentum
still in the box.
there, but there were definitely a ways out yet.
That grant application will have to be submitted by February 28th. So it's not very far down the road, but,
But it is nice. It's like what? 50% grant up to like $10 million or something, like it's
huge.
like they could pay for well, half, but. I mean, I'm not sure what this whole thing is gonna cost, $10 to $15 million or more, but. You could have instantly, you know,
A big
$6,
chunk.
$7 million handed to you. So it was a fairly easy decision for the group to say, well, yeah, let's make it net, whatever. Right? I mean, if that gets you
Net
half the
carbon
money,
Yeah.
yeah. If that gets you half the money up to, you know, how many millions of dollars, why wouldn't you?
Well, and there may be another organizer or another grant to apply to help, leverage it and that sort of thing for matching fees.
When I was here in July, we talked a lot about the new hot lunch program. It's going fantastic. We are seeing increase in need. But we're managing it for right now. I submitted another application last week, working on another one this week. To keep those dollars, coming forward so we can keep feeding people that are hungry or need that interaction in our community. Questions?
And then I guess the only comment on that, Ray, is, and I always say, I don't make the decisions for council, I don't speak to council, but I think that program is gaining momentum, and this is my personal opinion, I think that program's gaining momentum. So, you know, if you find yourself in a, you know, starting to be concerned about the financial viability of it, certainly don't forget to come back and talk to council about that and potential funding, because I do think it's, you know, it's certainly not it's not a requirement of municipal government to provide that service, but council is, you know, wants to have a good quality of life in their community, and they want to support everyone. And I think that they would be very amenable to a requested discussion. If you are not able to find
Thank you.
alternative dollars, don't forget about us.
We have had a corporate donor step up for the next 12 months. One Wednesday a month, every other month for, so six months. 1 day a week. They don't want to be recognized. They just want to do that. So we are seeing, you know, private donations of food as well. So that's very, very helpful.
Do you have an idea of how much money we would need on an annual basis, sort of a ballpark?
So right now, we're averaging, you know, a cost of a meal is $14. And I'm ordering 50 of each Wednesday. Sometimes the first week, because we're busier the first week, because food bank patrons can only go to food bank once a week. So often that first week is quite busy. So we're averaging 45, but I order 50. Sometimes first month I order 55. So 14.
So it's, well, I used 15 for easy.
Well, because GST.
15 times 50 is $750. So it's about $750 a
Yeah.
week. So you.
And that's the food costs. The program, I don't have a separate pot of money that I use for staffing time, but we just.
But even 750 times 52 is $39,000. So.
Yeah.
So, and it's grown, and it's probably going to continue to grow. So that 39,000 may not be an accurate figure in a year from now, might be 50,000, or who knows? Who knows how it's gonna grow, so.
Are you planning any fundraisers? for it?
We did one with Giving Tuesday. It was very successful. We brought in $3,700 in a day. Right? We just need to be really mindful of the appropriate ask and the appropriate marketing of the program. We haven't gone out and really publicly advertised or publicly asked at this point. And we're waiting to appropriate time.
You don't want. Because you have so many different programs, you don't want to saturate the market with your asks.
Right.
DeRay, is there ever a time on a Wednesday lunch program, at the Wednesday lunch program, that you don't have enough meals? And if you didn't have the meals, what would happen at that point in time? If you were over capacity?
We have bought a little apartment size deep freeze from somebody on Hannah Buy and Sell, and we've had another one just over Christmas donated. So at any time over the months that we ordered the 50 and only had 46 or vice versa, we put those individual meals in our freezer and we keep an inventory. There has been some Wednesdays that we've had to go to the deep freeze to make sure that nobody went without. We also provide those frozen meals if somebody shows up on Monday afternoon and hasn't eaten. So we kind of play with the inventory. When we first started, I was originally ordering 50 meals every week, and it was a little bit too many to start with. So we had an inventory in our deep freeze. So then we would advertise the last Wednesday of the month was going to be a grab and go. It wasn't going to be a hot meal. It was going to be prepackaged and you had to take it home to warm up. So we keep that inventory fresh. We try to have a minimum of 12 to 20 meals in our deep freeze, Angie.
Okay, thanks, Doray. Appreciate that.
The situation with your rent,
Mhm.
I realize that hasn't changed. Have you found any other funding?
No.
To support that? And so how are you?
I don't have anything professional or positive to say, Sandra.
But you are still at the same site
We have not received an eviction notice.
from, okay, until you do. Well,
They're not home.
yeah,
You don't answer the phone. it's good.
So, yeah, so as you can see, since Duray was here in July, some things have changed. There will be, and there is a focus on, you know, business hub, but as Duray indicated, unfortunately, to date, we haven't found another funding opportunity to keep things, you know,
As is.
as is. So as of April 1, because that's very quick, there is gonna be some changes. The hub, the way it is, will operate differently as a result of a lack of resources to maintain it in the same fashion as we have. That doesn't mean that it's can't be revamped and upgraded to that if we do come into some funding to do that, but it will look different. The one thing that we haven't talked a lot about, we've talked internally a little bit, is the Welcome to Hennepin.
Right, yeah.
So that was a project that the business hub took on from the town. Probably will fall back into our laps again. And again, another thing that we'll be looking for resources and are needing staff resources to continue to keep that program in
And I think
place.
that program specifically, I think if we can keep, you know, a collaboration between Lynx and, you know, business
Okay,
hub staff team or Lynx specific staff team members, Town of Hannah and Harvest Sky
Okay, yeah.
Economic Development. I think we need to do that.
okay. So there is some changes in the wind
Yeah, for sure.
that we'll be looking at, and like I said, if we can find some additional dollars, you know, might be able to revamp ourselves similar to where we have been operating the last 3 years. But in the interim, as was projected in our budget, Harvest Sky will still continue to operate out of that building market. We will still have the chamber operating.
Well, I'm hopeful that you will do agreement with the chamber.
Yeah, no, that would be our plan to continue to provide them that space to continue to operate as they have been. But the challenge, I think the challenge that we find is the chamber's part-time.
Yeah.
Mark can't sit there Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. He's gonna be out of the office. He's gonna be there. So there will be times, which is where things get a little bit messy. There will be times when the doors are locked and, you know, somebody's coming there, business up, checking, doors locked, what's going on? So it's not ideal,
It's not
but, it's working within our resource limits, so.
And depending on what works best for Levi and with Samuel, Samuel I think what we have another team meeting next week, but probably Samuel's looking at, we're looking at keeping Samuel on, probably like April, May.
Oh, okay.
So there's gonna be a little bit of a ease to the transition.
So when you say April, May, Ray, that would be in the existing hub?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And Levi probably
Yeah.
extend that.
Again, buys a little more time, and then again, if Levi's there and working out of that building and you get some secured grant dollars. Again, that's a third person that's in the building that can help keeping the doors open, so.
It's, I've had several meetings with Prairie Cans and just had one with Kidaway last week, and she says like, I know you're not done with the project, Ray, and she says, and we're looking internally within our.
So one of the
teams.
questions I had asked Ray. During one of our meetings talking about future business hub was, do you know what Reox doing with their centers?
Well,
Sorry, that's the Battle River, got coal money, and they did something similar.
they called them
yet different.
innovation center.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but their funding would be coming due, too, and they have buildings, they have staff, any indication what's gonna happen there.
I don't, in that they've had a lot of transition in their staff team. They haven't been attending the workforce development, like the Westmoreland Workforce Development Committee meetings. They haven't been attending, so purposely somebody's planning to reach out again to see a new contact. They were approached, as we were approached, to partner on a research project for interviewing affected coal workers that have gone through the coal programs, and they declined to work on that project.
Re-upped, okay.
So
I just was curious whether there was some synergies, or they found another pot of money, or.
and Kidaway
Something
didn't
happened.
allude to this is what they're doing
Okay.
to continue.
So they might be in the same boat as
well,
us.
they are in the
Okay.
same boat.
Nothing else? Thank you.
Welcome.
Keep up the good work. The rent thing, I'm kind of happy Sandra brought up, because I hate to be the bearer of bad news, so our pick at a scab, so. Would council like to thank Ray Beadle, Executive Director for Lakes, for a presentation updating council on Lakes activities. And Councilor Bowden.
So Dre, if you want to stick around, on Mark's next on. If you have to go, you have to go, but I don't know if there's.
I probably
Sometimes there's
will
so
run.
much, there's some synergy between.
Do you want me to stick around?
No,
You made him sit there. It's good.
Oh, it's all right.
I just gave my bag to him.
Just gonna give an update on where we're at, I guess, with stuff.
So all in favor? Council Paul, thank you. Gary. And thanks, Gary.
Yeah, I am gonna run if that's
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Harvest Sky Economic Development Corporation, Mr. Mark Dakota.
Thanks for having me. Kim just mentioned maybe it'd be a good time to come and update council on some of the goings on with economic development. I think probably like Ray, it's been a while since I've formally been here, but hopefully economic development is a long-term process, right? This isn't necessarily that, you have an economic development person or a team or whatever, and all of a sudden businesses and things start to pop up. So along those lines, we've and as updates I've given in the past, lots of the projects we started on when I first started, we're building the foundation, doing studies, helping with irrigation studies. We did the ag center study, the business case. We did some educational stuff. We did a lot of assessments. We got our new website. We did our branding, all that kind of stuff. You guys know that, so I'm not gonna go into details there, but really the first couple of years I spent really setting the foundation on moving things forward. Where we're at now is really starting to hopefully reap the benefits on the work that we've done and starting to grow from there. And I'm starting to see this, and I'll elaborate a little bit more as I move further, but, you know, in the beginning, after you set the foundation, we do a lot of reaching out to companies, a lot of going to people, companies, to schools, whatever project we're working on, saying, hey, you know, do you want to be involved? Have you heard of the Harvest Sky region and the communities and special areas? What I'm starting to see now over the last few months is people reaching out to us. So some of the projects, whether it's the Ag Center, I'll talk about special areas industrial park, some of the business and investment attraction we're doing, we're starting to get the phone calls now. So that tells me that the foundation we built is good. The marketing that we've been doing has started to work. The calling that we've been doing has started to generate interest. And now we're starting to see the benefit of, we're starting to get those calls. We're getting the interest. People are reaching out to see what opportunities there are here. And then hopefully over the next couple of years, we start to really reap the benefits of that. So as you know, economic development, like I've focused on really 3 pillars, resident attraction, tourism, and investment attraction. Resident attraction, you know, whether we've been doing a lot of advertising, social media advertising over the last couple of years. Whether that's had any benefit, I'd like to hope it does, but you can't really
gauge.
It's tough to gauge, but talking to the realtors, there's still no inventory in town. And I mean, it's January, nobody's moving and selling and stuff. So we'll see what the spring brings again. But as far as resident attraction, we're a destination. And that's not just Hannon area. I mean, there's a big turn, as we all know, from urban to rural, accelerated by the pandemic. But even before that, what I saw was a real return to affordable living and to good lifestyle. And that's the marketing we've been doing. I actually had a call I sat in with a gentleman and I always get the calls, people want to sell you their services, right? So this was a guy who's been trying to sell their concept, and he's got some other communities buying in this whole urban to rural return, quality of life, all the stuff. And he's like, and what we do, Mark, is we set you up on a website that we attract people that then want to move out of the big cities and go to smaller towns for the lifestyle and the affordable living. And this is what we do. And he went through like a 15-minute spiel. And I said, that's great. We've been doing that for 2 years. Thank you very much for validating the work that we've been doing. That's awesome. We'll call you. Thanks. So resident attraction, I like to think that the work we've done has been successful again. Like Mayor Pavlicek said, it's really hard to gauge that somebody saw the work and the advertising that we've done and that attracted them here. But if you don't advertise, if you don't put it out.
But it's also hard to dispute that it doesn't, Mark.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with the Global News about Hannah dying. And based on a study the U of C did, that Hannah's a good dying community and on. And so I politely said to the gentleman, I said, well, we have no real estate. Yes, our population may be getting older, but our population hasn't declined. And when you talk to them, they actually, oh, okay, well, that's not what the study shows. And so, well, your study is incorrect. We have people, and being where I'm at is really cool with the parcels, because if I phone a 250 number, I know that's BC, and we have Ontario numbers coming in, and it's almost, I'm not gonna say weekly, but I guarantee you once a month, there's someone has a package shows up that I have no idea who they are, where they're from. And being the chatty Cathy I asked them, and they go, well, there was a young couple from Barrie, Washington, younger than I am, from Barrie, Ontario, that moved here for the same reason, like it's affordable. They could not possibly buy a house in Barrie under any circumstances, and moved here. They both have jobs here now, so it's exciting. Like I said, it's tough to measure, Mark, whether it's your work, but it's tough to dispute that it's not your work. So
I'll take credit for it. Sure. You want to give it to me. No, you're absolutely right. And we're still getting calls, we're still getting inquiries, and it's even like that the gentleman who gave me his little pitch. You know, oh, we're targeting Ontario, we're targeting Vancouver and Vancouver Island. I'm like, it's exactly where we're pumping in our social media spend, which is all, lots of it coming to an end in March when the funding runs out, but that's beside the point. So yeah, So the resident attraction, we continue to market. We actually did a housing study. We finished one, or just waiting for the final copy, actually, worked with Wanda Dykow through special areas. That again is reinforcing what we need for housing. It goes into the population and the people moving here. Of course, it's all StatsCan, so it's delayed. So there's no way that StatsCan numbers have caught up with with any movement, but I'm sure the next
Phase.
yeah,
Census.
thank you. In a few years or whenever it's done would hopefully bear that out. But anyway, as far as go ahead.
Have you guys looked into any kind of family support or housing support for our own locals?
As far as,
Well, we've got probably 7 or 8 people that are homeless. And nothing's being done about it. The government won't help, assist anything. Ray and I have talked very heavily on this, and it's something that definitely has to be approached and, some kind of a direction taken on it, that's for sure. We're eager to bring in people and everything else, but we've got a lot of our own that we should be trying to support.
I don't know, Fred, that falls under economic development.
yeah,
But the housing needs assessment, whether there's
Yeah.
any correlation
Yeah,
between that work and where Council Crowell's.
yeah,
coming
no,
from.
for sure, that if we can leverage that, or,
yeah, absolutely. So no, and good points. That type of housing doesn't necessarily fall under my mandate, but that doesn't mean I'm not aware of it and trying to see what we can do. So you're right, it's kind of almost in a negative way, a perfect storm of the projects in the area taking up all the rentals, all that kind of stuff, pushing up rental rates. And then people moving here at the same time has really put pressure on our housing, and as a result, you're right, either our people that have lived here or other people are experiencing the problem with that. So absolutely. I did have one older lady who is stuck between rental housing, and she's struggling trying to find a place. She approached me for some help, and Duray and I, the Learning Links group has tried to help when we can. It's in that respect, it's definitely more of a social service, which would follow my mandate, but I'm not going to turn people away when they knock on my door. But more broadly, the housing study, yeah, I mean, it reinforces what we anecdotally know, that there is an issue with. And this, I don't like this term necessarily because it's way too broad, affordable housing.
Yeah.
And, if you read through some of the preliminary comments in the housing study, when they did their engagement, somebody, and I took it kind of rude, actually, they said, affordable housing, we don't want no more affordable housing because, well, we don't need any more of those type of people moving into the community. And I was like, well, whoever that was is obviously, we won't go into it. Anyway, I thought it was rather rude.
that's the Ray.
That's,
See nothing,
yeah.
don't see nothing at all.
Exactly. Affordable housing isn't necessarily that people that are homeless or on a support program like AISH or something, that doesn't just allude to them. One of the things that the housing study is pointing out is we have a real gap between the single family home and the manor and the lodge. There's no real, and I know we've got Dale building those type of houses, which is great. But they're being sucked up as fast as he can build them. There's a real gap in affordable, even for retirees, housing when somebody moves out of their, they're semi-retired, whatever, but they're not ready for a lodge. Right? We have a big gap in that, and that affordable housing can be for retirees that aren't struggling or anything. It's not a $400,000
Like a 55 plus apartment building or something like that.
Exactly.
It's hard because affordable changes depending on everybody's circumstances.
And that's it too, like, yeah, exactly. Affordable is such a broad term. Unfortunately, lots of people say affordable housing is for homeless people or people on social assistance, which then gives it a negative connotation. And
Many
I-
people in the city would consider our homes, majority of our homes to be very affordable.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah. So anyway, yeah, to answer your question, I'm aware of it. The flip side is it's very hard to attract a developer and Dale again is running flat out. It looks like at what he's doing. The builders in the area and stuff are busy doing, not necessarily new construction, but renovations. So it's about at this point, getting builders or anybody to do construction in the area to build stuff that we need. And if you look at, if there was out of town people that we could attract here that would move housing or doing it, well, they're all so busy in the Highway 2 corridor or anywhere else, they don't want to come out here. So we're in a spot of where the rentals are being used, the housing people are moving here, which is great, but we have a lack of housing, but we have nobody that wants or can come in and build housing. So then what's the answer, right?
And
So
I think
don't-
when we're looking at affordable housing, that's maybe a conversation that needs to be had with the Country Housing Authority. Because they're the ones that do receive funding from the province to operate low-cost subsidized housing. And I think they're probably full. And maybe it's time where they need to put some pressure on the province to say, we need some more affordable housing units in Hannah, because they are subsidized. The cost to build, the cost to operate is subsidized by the province. So that might be an avenue to pursue.
We have no one on that board, correct?
We don't have any council appointees. The way it's set up, we do appoint 2 citizens at large
Okay,
to that committee. And I think this year we have Angela McGillian and Michelle Haig, I think are 2 representatives to sit, because there's also, Big Country Housing is also includes Serial.
it's almost, yeah, it's a, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
but we
why-
don't have, there's no, the way it's set
I
up, there's no
didn't think-
council
yeah.
appointment, but we have 2 citizens at large that we appoint.
Maybe that's something we should
Yeah.
have a conversation with them and.
Yeah, and just see if
See.
where they want to go
Yeah.
with that, so. Cause I think
There-
that's
there
they're
are
an
avenues,
established
yeah.
entity already. They have established contracts with the province that they might be able to
Leverage.
move that over if they're able to. Again, the challenge will be proving that there is that need to the province,
Well,
so.
that's one of the reasons we did the housing study with, again, anecdote, it tells us what we already anecdotally know. But now we have a piece of paper that if somebody wants to go, we can do, well, here, this study actually told us. What we need to know, like help us out, but yeah, it's also tough too, like housing is such a delayed thing. You have a need today because we have. No rentals, we have people moving here. By the time you turn around and start building places 2 or 3 years from now, when they're ready to be occupied. The wind power projects are gone and stuff, and all of a sudden there's rentals empty and the people that own those rentals are like,
Affordable.
yeah, and they're like, well, now nobody's here and I have empty units. And you guys went and built a whole bunch more stuff, right? So it's a tough situation, but it's not an easy one to address. So that's kind of where we're at with resident attraction. Tourism, another big one we've gotten more into. I learned early on when I started that we need, product. It is really the way to attract tourism. People want experiences. They don't just come to a community to drive around a community. And we've been, and I'm not telling, anybody, I'm not telling Lori anything she doesn't already know, right? We're gonna work on the community beautification downtown. You need to have an attractive community, but you also need to have a reason for people to want to come here in the first place. So we did some early work with the golf course. We helped them rebrand, do some marketing materials. We've done lots of the videos, the advertising, because the golf course, as far as a tourism draw, it was ready to go. It's there, it's operating, and it's easy to help them and just bring them along and get their word out there. We're focused on a couple other initiatives. We're doing lots of work with the Roundhouse. I applied for a Prairies Can, the infrastructure grant so we got the feasibility study done. And it has a phased approach to helping the Roundhouse group. really get the bigger events and the attractions and the things they need. So phase one, for example, is washrooms and that kind of stuff. Phase two is working more on the boiler room roof, that kind of thing. Phase three is bigger, is really getting the larger building going and stuff.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
And we as the Roundhouse Society is also working on, been applying for grants for other stuff that is not covered under that. And so some restoration projects and that sort of thing. So it's not like we are just relying on that. Having washrooms in our facility would be huge for bringing more weddings and larger drawing type events to bring more people to our community.
I know the Roundhouse in downtown Toronto, it's actually interesting because they've, I guess commercialized to be the proper term, but the Steam Whistle Brewery actually occupies part of it, and every brick that they remove to put their business in there has to be replaced when they move out, and it was super interesting to, you know, after having hours here and then going and seeing what they've done there with their, it's,
We've
Yeah,
had a
that's
couple,
Steam Whistle. We talked to them.
yeah,
They went to one.
they were looking at this and we've had a few people come look at the site, the building for like a distillery or a brewery of some kind, so that is also.
yeah, that's, I'm not trying to,
Oh, yeah, no,
yeah.
no, I'm just adding, so, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's, we've been working well with the society, and the consultants that did the feasibility study really identified that, yeah, I mean, if a business came along, that'd be a great fit for part of it. In the meantime, there's a real need for the large event space, weddings, as Sandra alluded to. They compared it to some of the other wedding type venues like old barns and different things that people are using, and the potential is really there. But again, you know, just due to the where the building's at, they need things like washrooms and that stuff to really be a destination. So that can be another huge draw as a product, tourism or event space for the region. We've tied in a lot with Travel Drumheller. We're doing advertising with them to again try and bring those people out. So people go to Drumheller, obviously the museum and stuff like that, and they spend 3-4 days. If we can get them even a day trip to come out this way, like they get millions of visitors, we could get 2% of those people to come to Hannah, right, as a day trip. So that's, we're working well with Travel Drumheller. I was put on the Badlands tourism zone. So Travel Alberta is doing initiatives around the province, and they've identified the Badlands tourism zone as one of their key places that they want to start drawing people away from the mountains, or the mountains are full. So they're trying to get people to go to other spots. So I was on the steering committee for the Badlands tourism zone with people from Drumheller and Brooks and everywhere that they've identified as the bad. So one of the things we went through, and hopefully that study will be coming out shortly, is identifying the main targets to put resources behind in the Badlands region to really emphasize those to tourism. So for example, one of the other ones they identified was Dinosaur Provincial Park. It's like, hey, that's ready to go. They can put some more resources, they can advertise and get people to come out. We actually got, I think the Roundhouse, we scored very highly. So now I think the Roundhouse, hopefully when the final study comes out, will be top of the list for Travel Alberta, and that would then hopefully be easier to get more funding. So if we can get the Prairies Can funding to get phase one, hopefully then Travel Alberta would come in with some more money. So we're looking at potentially very large dollars to hopefully get the Roundhouse. And again, as Councillor Bowden pointed out, they continue to generate money to do the restoration work. I'm trying to find money for the economic development and the business development side of things, but eventually they come together. So,
Thank you.
yeah, doing a lot of work with tourism again, because that's kind of the next level of where we're taking our stuff. So, and then of course, investment attraction, you know, economic development is supposed to be about attracting business. We spent the first couple of years again, like I said, building our resources, building the foundation. And now we've spent the last year with our lead generating consultant out of Calgary, who's done an excellent job. And he just sent me a kind of an update progress report. just to give you some numbers on what we've done. So we've had lots of meetings with businesses. We're focusing on some key areas, obviously. And again, this isn't rocket science. It's just putting the resources behind where the strengths are. So value-added agriculture, value-added beef, biofuels, logistics, data processing and storage, energy, hydrogen production, renewables, like Claude talked about, carbon capture and storage, advanced materials, Sheerness Industrial Park. We're doing a lot of work with Trent and Kelsey and Megan over at Special Areas, and of course the Ag Center. So over the course of not quite, I think, the year or so that we've had the consultant in Calgary working with us, we've talked to over 90 individuals and groups, and have had face-to-face meetings with them, either virtually or I've done a few trips to Calgary to talk to businesses to see where they're at. Actively promoting Harvest Sky region for those 14 opportunities or so I just mentioned. The big ones that are coming out, of course, agriculture is scoring very high. Energy, of course, hydrogen production is big right now. The industrial park is really exciting. So we've had numbers of conversations with businesses, and like I said, we're starting to get those businesses calling us now, because we helped work with Special Areas. We've got did a flyover video with some graphics and stuff. We've got the advertising, the materials we're putting out. Special Areas has the industrial park on their website. We've got 4 or 5 or 6 really serious businesses that want to or are seriously looking at that site, just waiting for one domino to fall, one piece. So we've talked to, for example, a vertical greenhouse grower, and by coming out here, they realize, for example, their transportation costs would be higher, even though we're central. I mean, if they're close to a big city, they can sell their product right into the grocery stores. What they would need is, so we have very affordable land at the industrial park, but what they're looking, how do we get cheap power? Because they're obviously a big use of power. They have the water there. We have water license at the industrial park. But then we start talking to people like Claude and other renewables. They're like, well, if they set up a solar thing right next to the park, they can pump cheap power in there, which bypasses the grid, where we all know all the costs are, right? So we're starting to put the pieces together at the industrial park and around the region. It's like, well, if we can get the vertical grower that needs power, and then the power supplier, we've got the water and the cheap land, then it becomes really beneficial for people to start to locate there. So those are happening. I'm not gonna divulge names and stuff, obviously.
But that's not where their solar project is going.
No.
Kind of sure that's it's not.
The Sheerness one is strictly tied into transmission.
Yeah. But just having him and having those conversations, now he's like, oh, wait, if I provided power or set up a separate solar site on the industrial site, then he would have a place to do business and provide potential companies with cheap power. So again, it's just fitting those pieces together and making that first domino fall over. And then I think it'll just boom, 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 boom. We had one call from another solar provider, but they also do some battery storage. They called us when they heard about the industrial park and said, well, we're looking to do a large battery installation to start proving out the effects of having battery combined with renewables. And so we've had some of those conversations. So just it's hard because economic development, everybody thinks, well, we hire an economic development person, we put money into economic development, where's the factory?
Should pay for itself.
It should pay for itself. It doesn't pay for itself. And 3 or 4 years from now, after I've come and gone and the next person's come and gone, and whatever happens, and the hub closes or whatever happens, a whole bunch of businesses will locate at the industrial park, and yay, they all came to the industrial park. Looking back 3 and 4 years, all the groundwork and everything that we've done to hopefully get them here, right? So, yeah, lots of conversations right now. Lots of buzz is being generated about our region. It's really good. I hope it translates.
And that's the main reason I wanted Mark to come here, because Mark and I have these conversations, and I just wanted you guys to know from the elected officials side, that there is some movement, there is some positivity, there is some lead generations happening, there are these discussions happening that, hopefully they will come to fruition soon, so.
And how do we stay in front of these people, Mark? Like, how do we keep that snowball going now with the promotional dollars that was coming from, or the money that was coming from Prairies Can into the marketing piece,
Yeah,
developing the materials, paying for the advertising?
what do we do?
Yeah,
do we
how
do
can we
next?
keep that going?
Yeah, it's so what I tried to do. With especially lots of the marketing money and stuff is not, I mean, we had enough of it, we were able to do lots of things. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but again, what I really wanted to do is set the table. So rather than just put all the money into whatever radio advertising and print media and stuff, I wanted the video production. I wanted the stuff that we can continue to use. So we won't have the money necessarily to advertise it, but we can keep, social media is virtually free. We can keep pumping stuff out on social media now that we've had the videos and the materials and the brands created.
You have a company managing that.
Well, that becomes the problem,
Yeah.
right? Is, and one of the reasons why we would like more help at the hub is because one person can't do it all, right? So I've really tried to set the table that if we don't get any more financial support for resources, at the very least, I can keep sending out links or whoever, right? So it's not as perfect as having a company do it, but rather than me sitting there going, well, how do I create print media? How do I do videos? I've got all that, we have all that stock now. I can spend time at least trying to pump it out there. Yeah. Other than that, I don't have an answer, it's money,
Okay.
it's just money.
Yeah.
But we've really got a good foundation of materials and stuff. We just have to maintain, at the very least, maintain the stuff, maintain our websites, maintain our information, keep things right, and then hope, I guess. So, yeah, and some of the companies, I know there's a lot of companies we talk to startups or people kicking tires, but we have conversations with well-established companies. I maintain connection with Westmoreland. I went to Calgary and we met with Heartland representatives. So it's not just tire kickers and people looking for cheap land and that kind of stuff, hoping to set something up. We're having good, solid conversations with big companies too. So there's lots of exciting stuff happening. I kind of look, I know renewables has its detractors and that kind of stuff, but really where oil and gas was 150 years ago, it's almost where we're at with the new wave of energy. And whether it's wind or solar or hydrogen or whatever, it's almost like that new frontier. And we're well positioned in this region with the resources that we have to capture that new wave. And I know it's tough because we've been a coal area for so long. The people are still, it's not fair. Oil and gas is our bread and butter, and coal, and I'm not saying we get rid of it. It's going to be around for a long time.
But Mark, I look at the history of Hannah and having come here with the oil and gas industry. Primarily we were an agriculture industry, then CN Rail came to town, and then we were a rail town. We were deemed a rail town.
Yeah.
And then the power plant and the mine fired up. And when I first moved here 23 years ago, nobody knew what Gibbs Petroleum was. And when they explained to them, it's the yellow trucks that drive down the road. Is there enough activity in this area? And we have a very, I don't know what percentage of people in town that work in the oil and gas industry, but it would be significant. And, we seem to, for whatever reason, Hannah is very resilient. So, we seem to
More
very,
to the different.
yeah, I was gonna say more for adapt to the
Yeah.
next thing. And, the solar is interesting. The solar is interesting. The wind turbines, as I've been corrected numerous times on, it's not a windmill, it's a wind turbine. There's some opportunities there in town that are starting to come to fruition as we work to the next.
Yeah,
phase.
and it's at the end of the day, it's energy, right? The world needs more energy. Alberta needs energy, and you know, oil and gas and coal and everything will be a part of our lives. It'll outlive us, I guarantee that. But we're on the beginning stages, the early phases of the next wave of whether it's renewables or hydrogen or, you know, I'm not.
Whatever new technology.
Whatever new technology comes, we're ready. If we can be the next, whatever the next iteration is for this region, it's here, it's coming. So, and corporations are identifying that. So I think we just need to be ready to get on board. Anyway, that's my 5 minutes. Half an hour, whatever.
Well, and I know you've probably gone through several pairs of shoes as you're running around. Are you going to another, like a trade show in the near future for?
Don't have one planned, don't
Okay, I
have the
wasn't
money
sure.
for.
No, but
No,
no, I wasn't sure. if
yeah.
We're asking for more brochures or something, or.
Oh, we're always printing new stuff, it's stuff for
Yeah.
the firefighters curling Bonsfield.
Okay,
But again, there's, so we've got, you know, I've printed ahead, using the marketing money, printed some stacks of brochures, the money will run out, but the brochures will be there that now firefighters bring in, you know, 100 people or whatever it is to the community. Well, let's stuff some tourism brochures, but hunting and fishing and stuff. So if the firefighters go back to wherever they're from, and then all of a sudden it's hunting season, they're like, oh, Harvest Sky, I should find out what's the right. So
Yeah.
target those people and those things when they're here. It's just stuff a little information in the bag.
and then they can tour the fire tower, Father Deer.
Yeah.
Again,
So
no, well, thank you, you've been doing amazing work.
Any more questions for Mark? Also, thanks, Mark, Dakota Manager of Harvest Sky and Economic Development Corporation for the presentation for updating council and activity of the Harvest Sky. We need to come up with something shorter. Economic Development Corporation.
Fastest corridor economic.
Yeah, exactly. Motion, Counselor Cole, all in favor?
good,
Yeah.
just Harvest Sky, like
Harvest
really.
Sky. Yeah, no, I'm with
Harvest
this.
Sky Economic Development Corporation is the legal name, but Harvest Sky and the region is really the enduring part in my mind, because I mean, you've got businesses that have used the name. The
Yeah.
SPCA rebranded Harvest Sky, so
Pharmacy, but.
so it's catching on, which is great, because then the more advertising and social media that they do, the Harvest Sky name gets out there.
Association.
Anyway,
Okay, thanks, buddy.
cool,
Thanks, Mark.
thanks.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Neil.
So I'll go through my report, just want to touch base on most of it. So signage project, as you can see, all of these signs are currently in production. We had been back and forth with the screw pile installation being delayed, and then when we actually got a date and we sat down and discussed it, it was supposed to be next week. But the actual signs weren't gonna be installed till closer to the end of March, so I didn't want our guys to go and clean this spot where they were gonna go. And knowing in 2 months' time, they might have to go back and clean it all again, so we worked with them to have the screw piles come in, be done, and the signs to follow immediately after that. So that'll be happening starting March 20th to 24th, but they will be doing, when we say facility signage, brand signage, the week of March 20th. So that would be, for example, the town office. We've got the 2 signs there, the arena, the pool, anything that would go on a building, they'll be doing that. So that's kind of where it's at. So hopefully, according to the plan, everything will be done, installed by the end of March. I do have a bit of a side request that just came across my desk Monday afternoon. So I just wanted to present it to you. You guys can think about it, no decision. So Al Coates, formerly with the Calgary Flames, was the general manager of the Calgary Flames, involved with their Stanley Cup team in '89, reached out to the office. I guess it's Lanny's 70th birthday coming up soon. And they were trying to find what they could get Lanny what, and he'd been doing some research and saw our Hannah sign, our entrance sign that said, well, home of Nickelback and stuff. So I said, well, your timing's actually pretty good because we're replacing those signs. We'll be taking those signs down. You know, if you'd be interested in one of those signs. And he's very interested in one of our entrance signs, but I said I would need to have, you know, that's not a decision I make, that's a decision council makes. We have 3 of them. So it is something that they are interested in. They would then probably want to remanufacture the sign slightly and put home of Lanny McDonald somewhere on it, and they wanted to present it to him, you know, as a gift from the alumni. I didn't know, but according to Al Coates, Lanny must have a restaurant in Montana. And they kind of thought that's where it would end up. So, any quick initial thoughts on that?
I think it would be a great idea.
I thought it would be great, a great
It's
economic
unfortunate.
development
Yeah,
thing.
I'm not sure what happened with Lanny in the town of Hannah, but you know, I've requested him to come a couple of times for different hockey functions and it's just gone to deaf ears almost. So, but yeah, I mean, like it or not, this was home.
Well, and again, I've heard the stories like anyone else. I have not talked to Lanny McDonald, but I've heard the stories that he will refer to the Handhills, he will refer to Craig Mile. But I never heard him say, you know, when he's introduced or described as being from Hannah, I've never heard him correct anybody.
Oh,
in
no,
that.
no.
But I do, you know, Al Coates is certainly someone who knows Lanny 1,000 times better than me. And he thinks that, you know, Lanny would like that, and would like that sign. So, you know, I just wanted to put it in your thoughts to see if there's anything. Like I said, we've got 3. We haven't really talked about what will happen to them. One, we assumed we would want to turn over to the museum. But I'm not sure what we would do with the other ones.
Maybe Nickelback wants it.
Yeah, maybe they'll buy it.
Yeah, so that's, I just wanted to throw that out there. It just kind of came out of the blue, Monday afternoon, this call, and, so I just wanted to put that in there to kind of fit in with the signage project. So, downtown redevelopment project. So MP has begun work on the detailed design of our downtown redevelopment project. So we did get money through, Harvest Sky, through, the coal transition group through Couriers Can. I think Mark has got $160,000 available for the detailed design work. So MP has started on that. They were out last week doing some of the surveying of the underground infrastructure in terms of depths and sizes and all of that. So that's working through that, and kind of in a similar timeline as our grant application is being finalized through the feds. So they have started some of the survey. They are going to be doing some geotechnical, so there will be some boreholes. I think somewhere between 4 to 8 boreholes on the 2 blocks, which will primarily give them some information on what type of soil composition. But they'll also use it. They're doing another environmental assessment. I don't think there's been one done on the streets in town, but we do know the history of Anna has had lots of fuel stations in this area. And of course, we know we've got the Truman Ford lot. So they're going to use the boreholes as part of pulling up, whether they're pulling up any contaminated soil as they go through that. So the geotechnical is going to start February 13th. They're doing some environmental work. They're hoping to complete a lot of that by February 10th. They're going to have 30% drawings by February 21st, 60 by March, 90 by the end of April. And they should be ready to go out to tender by May 8th, provided council has dollars through the federal grant to allocate to that project.
You're pretty optimistic with this grant, aren't you?
I am optimistic. I know it's big dollars, but I am optimistic, partly so because they have allocated these dollars to the region, and the region has come up with a formula as to how they're gonna allocate it, so that's probably the biggest challenge. So I am optimistic there. I do believe, and I've told this with MPE, I do believe we need to do some more public engagement, public consultation on primarily the above ground stuff, the design. I know through 818, there was a lot of consultation done, either at the farmer's market or the post office or some of those. But I don't know if the downfall, I think, through their engagement was, I don't think our local businesses engaged as much as they could have or should have, because they're the ones that are gonna have the impact on them. So we do have some provision to do some public engagement with our local businesses and one-on-one meetings to talk about it, get their concerns. They are using the 818 concept as their initial starting point for their design, and it can be tweaked. But
One thing that actually is interesting, drove through Two Hills. And they have, and I don't, jut outs, is that the proper terminology?
well, they
Bump
call it
outs.
bump outs.
Bump outs,
Yeah.
that's what it was. And it was interesting because they put bump outs along Highway 36 to, I guess, better protect the businesses, but now their challenge was, now they can't plow the snow, so they've actually put markers on the edge of the bump outs. So now they've got these roadside markers out on this bump out, which should have been very appealing. But it didn't look good when we drove through. I just went, ooh, that's what we were gonna do in town here, so.
Okay.
Stetler has it.
Stetler has, downtown Stetler has,
Okay.
too, is another one that I'm aware of in the region. So, yeah, there's pros and cons. No doubt it makes, it will make some of those things more challenging, more time consuming. Because you don't just have a simply straight way, you're gonna have to cut in and clean that out. So cleaning downtown after snowfall is gonna take longer. Minimum.
Councilor,
So who is going to be responsible for cleaning that bump out? If there is a business nearby, is that their responsibility or is that the town?
It may fall on us. I don't know if we've got into those specific details, because they're probably gonna be, they might be technically in
Okay.
front of their building, and I'll use ATV as an example, or Connie and Danny's building. If there's a jet out there, it's not in the middle of the intersection, like the roadway, it's on their property, so.
But the curb line is.
But the curb line would be indented, right? No, well, we've cleaned the road from curb to curb,
Right.
but the actual concrete above might be something that those property owners say, well, that's a lot more sidewalk that has to be done. I think the town should pick that up, so. Because there would be bump outs on three corners, so. So just, it's in the works. We will have some more discussion there. Community grants, so working again with MPE has a grant writer, so working on the resubmittal of the community center renovation project. Through the Green and Inclusive Building Grant, and that's an 80-20 split, 80 from the feds if we're successful, so it's a big opportunity. As I've said to this group before, I think one of the challenges of our application is it's not green enough. You know, if we changed and we put solar panels on the roof or geothermal heating or something, it might be more attractive application. It hits the inclusive part very well, but it's not great on the green side, so. Land use bylaw review, just want to put this in your calendar. Thank you for the time, I guess it was last week. Working with Tracy, she's going to be back in the area, the last week in February, so we've identified the afternoon, evening of February 23rd to hold the public open house. So you don't, there's no requirement that you were there. It'll probably be somewhere talking to her, probably maybe 5 to 8 PM. It'll be a, drop in, come see, come talk. Her intention is that Tracy will probably address the majority of the questions and concerns people may have, but it's always if you're there, you'll hear firsthand from a resident who may have a concern with change in property or a change to the land use bylaw. So I know we had to pick a date, and I know I couldn't check with everyone whether it would work or not. And Tracy's intention is following this, that she will prepare a report that will basically indicate what they've heard, what the responses would be, so that you've got some of that information. But it's also nice if you're there for a period of time, you'll hear firsthand, and be able to engage firsthand as well. So as part of this process, we will advertise the open house to the public to attend. But I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 individual letters that will be sent to property owners who we are proposing a redistricting change. So going from C1 to C2 or to CT, anyone who will change will get a letter. Tracy and I worked on the letter, so it's ready to go. But it's basically will indicate the process. It will indicate that as part of the process, as part of the review, there's been a recommendation to change it from C1 to CT. And here is the implications to you as a business owner in terms of what setbacks for a C1 versus a CT is, what permitted and discretionary uses are allowed, and they'll get that information as well. I think it's a 3 or 4 page package that would go to each property owner, and it would encourage them to attend or to contact Tracy to have that discussion. So that's the next step in the process.
And when will the time be confirmed?
Well, I think Tracy's wanting it to be 5 to 8 PM, so that's kind of what we've got in the letter, but the
Coffee
letter,
and donut kind of thing.
yeah, pop in, no formal presentation, so I'll use Counselor Olson. If he's got a piece of property that's changed, he can come in and he can see the maps and the posters, and he can talk to Tracy, myself, David will try to be there and say, yeah, I'm in C1 and it's been changed to CT, how come? And I have a concern changing to CT this, and we can do our best to address the questions and answers, but if we're not, we can address them as that's a concern that we have to identify moving forward. So the mayor and I had a great meeting with special areas last week. I think special areas have made are doing the tour with their urbans. So it was our turn last week, so we went with Jordan, Darcy, Trent, and Sean. We reviewed the intermunicipal collaboration framework, discussed any issues or concerns, identified any upcoming projects either one would be working on that might have implications for the other, or cost sharing initiatives. It was really a really good conversation. It was really good to hear from them that our urbans are important to their success. So we think I always approach it that we're thankful to special areas because they contribute financially on a number of different projects and facilities. But at the end of the day, they were very clear that they are not successful if the town of Hannah is not successful.
That was kind of, I guess, the biggest,
Yeah.
the shock that I never thought of is they laid it on the line, basically said that we, the towns, the urbans have to be successful in order for them to draw employees and people, and it's something that never crossed my mind even. And it was very, very well received, obviously, but I never crossed that boat.
And they're hoping, I think in their vision, you know, I think they're a great partner. I think they're hoping to be able to contribute more to our communities in the future. I think specifically with the increased assessment on renewables, they're gonna have some more dollars at their disposal, and I think they're willing to share a portion of them with their urbans to keep their urbans operating successfully. And like I said, they indicated a number of employment challenges that they can't fill positions. And if they don't have, if people in some of those positions that they're looking to fill have other opportunities, they need their urbans to be successful and provide a good quality of life so that people go, yeah, no, I'll move to Hannah. It's got a hospital, it's got this, I can do this and this. And so they need to have, you know, successful, sustainable urbans that provide a good quality of life, because they know the majority of their employees will live in one of those urban areas. So it was a great discussion. We've already had a great relationship, but it just affirmed that. You may be aware of the Hannah Herald closing their print edition. Not sure exactly what that will mean to us. I think from their perspective, they still want to retain us as an advertiser in their digital presence, but I'm not sure what that's going to look like. We are kind of reviewing what options we have. As you know, we use the Herald. We have a page in the Herald every edition, and we use that to advertise our events, our council meetings. We use that to meet the legal requirements of the MGA in terms of advertising, development permits, public hearings, all of those things. Without that paper, we have the option, we may have to bring a new bylaw. The MGA does allow us to advertise public hearings and different things in different formats. So we may have to do that, not knowing where we're gonna be or what we're gonna do. The ECA review is an option. But I personally like that paper, but I haven't noticed any other municipalities using that as their primary advertising mechanism in print. So there is some changes coming forward there. Doesn't surprise me. Print newspaper is going that way, and it's probably going to continue to go that way, unfortunately, based on the economics of not having to print paper and deliver paper, and you can just do it electronically. So we're working on some options that we'll bring back to council in terms of meeting the legislative requirements and how we want to get our words out. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to put maybe another one of those information things that the town has, like similar to.
I mean, a kiosk,
Yeah,
TV?
Yeah.
Okay.
like in the mall, like in the Reason Brother Mall, where there's some people that gather. I'm not sure if that would meet some.
I don't know if it would meet any more, I don't know if it would meet any legislative requirements, but it certainly is another avenue for people to, I would think whether there's a place around the coffee table.
Yeah, or even on that far. Yeah, somewhere. in
So we
there
can, we
that-
can, we can
that's kinda
talk to
neutral
Dawn
for
and see.
businesses or whatever, and still is a site where people can gather and
Yeah.
actually read.
We
it.
can talk to Dawn to see if there's an interest there, so,
I don't know what the others think, whether or not that's.
yeah, it's something we can investigate, definitely. So I don't know, again, news to us, we're not sure exactly what it's gonna be, but that's where that's at. Councilor Bowden and I had a brief discussion, after the Oyen, Hospital Open House meeting. I know Councilor Bowden attended. I watched bits and pieces of it online to hear what's going on. And so I did reach out to Heather Kipling, who was the director for HS Communications for Central Zone, and she provided me that response. So the difference is we're in Central Zone. Oyen's in Palliser Zone, I believe. They're in a different hospital zone, different people. But one of the concerns was, Wayans reduced, closed their acute care basically temporarily. What effect would that have on us being the nearest closest hospital? She's indicated that they don't anticipate there being an impact to our emergency department or acute care beds. They are closely monitoring the situation. But it is what it is. We are back up. We're back up, not to normal full 10 years ago beds, but we're back up to the 10 beds. I know they had reduced them here 6 months ago for a few weeks. But it was interesting having the discussion with special areas. They obviously know in their communities, hospitals are important. They're following that way and one as close as they can and involved. And they, even in the discussion with Jordan, we've in the past have been recruiting doctors and providing incentives for doctors to work in our communities. We may, of course, at least from Jordan's perspective, his thought is we may have to find ourselves in that same position with nurses. Because that seems to be the sticking point in the situation now is not having nurses. So they operate differently in every community. I can't speak to every community, but I know I think in concert, they provide the doctors with houses. We don't here. We subsidize the operation of the clinic. But maybe we're gonna have to buy some houses, build some houses, do something as a retention for nurses. So I don't think it's gonna change quickly, unfortunately. Just because of the fact that I do have a daughter who's a nurse, and they're only putting so many out at any one time. And if there's a shortage, and if they're building more capacity in the schools, but that's a 4-year turnaround minimum before you're gonna have any additional resources in the system, and whether they're gonna offset the nurses who are retiring. I think it's a challenge, and it's a challenge everywhere. We'll see. There is some, I know I've talked to a couple of local people who have family members who are nurses who are strongly considering moving back to Hannah. And that might bring us some benefit and some fixed benefit that they're not here on a temporary contract for 3 months, that, they're here and plan to be here and settle. But it's gonna be a challenge. I don't want to sugarcoat it any which way. And I'm not predicting that it's gonna happen here, but there's nothing that we're not any different than Oyen in terms of if our nursing group gets diminished and they don't have resources here, that the same thing can't happen here. So I just wanted to touch base on that. 2 things, or another thing not in my report. As you are aware, the firefighters curling championships start tomorrow. Mr. Mayor Pavischuk is gonna have an enlightening, dynamic, grand opening ceremony speech tomorrow at 11, I believe, Mr. Mayor. 11?
That's the new time, yeah.
Okay.
It's changed about 3 times.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the last one I heard was
That's-
11
yeah.
o'clock. I think the first draw is at 8:30
Yeah, I believe
tomorrow
so.
morning. The teams do have practice time available this afternoon, and then they're having their Calcutta this evening. And currently starts at 8:30 Thursday morning, opening ceremonies at 11. So you get a chance to pop down and see, please do. So I just want to make sure you are aware of that. And Mr. Mayor, double checking, are you still good for the banquet Saturday night?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. And I think that's it, unless there's any questions.
We need a motion to accept your report.
We have it in the past here.
No,
We
I'm
could.
aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at this whole
Yeah,
thing.
no, yeah, We certainly can. We can certainly have that motion.
No, I'm okay not having it. Just-
Okay.
I was double checking here because I do forget quite regularly.
No, we're good.
Okay,
Did you want any discussion or thoughts on the rummage sale?
Well, that's the next on the agenda, so.
rummage sale.
So, yeah, it's a very difficult situation, but I know, it appears now that the rodeo has basically got a new annual date.
Well, for this year.
Well, the last 2 years, it'll be, well, last year and this year, it'll be the middle of September. So when we were made aware that that was the weekend that they were going to be having the rodeo, we did approach the chair of the rummage sale to say, is there a possibility that you could move yours from September 30th to September 23rd? Then it just moves everything up a week. The chair indicated that they did not want to move from that date, primarily because a number of their clients have their dollars through some sort of support program that comes at the end of the month. And they felt that that might hurt their revenue and clients, customers at their rummage sale. So they are wanting to sign an agreement to have the September 30th date. And I just wanted to have this discussion with council to see how, what council's position on this is. Minor hockey hasn't come back to me or hasn't said anything to me in this regard. I don't think they're even focused on when the rodeo is, because that's next fall, but I know it's come up numerous times over the years that they're frustrated that they can't get on earlier because they're spending time going to Drumheller to practice and do tryouts.
Yeah, they
Ready for
rent
the
ice from
season.
Drumheller and Delia and wherever they can get ice, basically.
So this is just an opportunity, but it's a, you know, it might seem like a simple thing. Shifting back a week for the rummage sale, you know, you might look at it on paper and go, that's not really a big deal. It's a week. We have lots of time to promote it. Vice versa, if it stays on the 30th, you go to minor hockey, well, it's only a week. We don't have to have an answer today. I just wanted to, you know, start the conversation so that you're aware that there is an opportunity, and I guess gauge council's position in terms of how aggressive they would want to be in this situation, because council can be as aggressive as they want. Council can say, no, rummage sale, the date that is available is September 23rd. We're not going to rent it to you September 30th. Again, that'll have some negative dynamics. Or you can say, no, you can have September 30th. Sorry, hockey, you're going to go and be in, and won't be able to get in until October 7th. I know when word gets out about this, minor hockey will probably want to push, but again, it's either a week either way. So to me, it doesn't seem significant, but to each of those two groups, it is a significant.
Well, from an economic standpoint, we talk about better utilizing our facilities. So I mean, if we can fill our facilities on every weekend, then I think we need to look at it. But from another economic point, if our teams are traveling to Drumheller to practice, skate, evaluate. I went down for evaluations and they took me out for dinner, and it wasn't at Sammy's or the Gray or anywhere. It was in Drumheller.
But we all know too that they will shop in Drumheller. If you end up being in Drumheller because of tryouts or practices, while you're there, you'll go shopping. And again, that is a potential loss of business to our local businesses as well. So.
I totally agree. Everybody makes the comment. It's nice to see facilities in use. Hate to see them empty. This is the most efficient path to that.
So is there anything that you guys need? Like, I can bring it back to the 14th meeting because we can't make a decision here, but do you want to have, delegations? Do you want to have people speak to you from either party about the importance of moving it forward? Because it is a very passionate discussion, so there is gonna be some negative either way, whichever way the decision goes. There will be some people who will be not happy with whatever decision is made.
Is there some historical, like, we don't always hear how much revenue the rummage sale brings in?
Well,
They're not
typically, I would suggest that they raise $20,000 per sale.
I don't know that we even heard, did we hear?
Yeah, I don't know, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but using that as a ballpark.
I know this last one, they were down, all I heard was they were down significantly, so what significantly is
Yeah, I don't know.
subjective.
Well, I guess that's the thing, it's a fundraiser to support our hospital.
Yeah,
You know, and I know there's doesn't matter what you do, there's always gonna be something that keeps somebody from doing whatever or affecting whether we move it or not. And, yeah, I just don't know what to think.
yeah, it's not an easy one. If it was easy, we'd have moved forward, but it does affect either groups, and either groups are, as I said in my report, either groups are important to our community and do important things to our community. Is it going to be detrimental to either one? Probably not. It's probably more convenience than anything, but I don't know until there was a rummage sale that was moved up and not on the end of the month. There's nothing really to go by in terms
No
of
metrics.
actual, yeah, we moved it up a week and they were down 50%. I think there's no metric to do that, because it always has been for 30 years, the last Saturday in September or the first one in October, depending on how the rodeo fell.
Do those clients that they're referring to, they get monthly payments, is that right? Not,
That's
Twice a month.
that's what we've been led to believe from
so then,
the chair.
even if
They get
it
paid
was
at
the end of
the month.
August, if they were to move it up to the end of the previous month, well, then they would look at having an issue getting volunteers, I would imagine. Because
yeah.
of
Because of the
summer
timing, yeah.
and school and, you know, all that sort of thing, so I don't.
I just know that there's some passionate feelings on this either way, so if you do want, we can certainly invite them to come speak to council before you make a decision. I don't know where you want to go with this, Mr. Mayor, so.
I personally have no problem with them coming and speaking. Anyone else?
Counselor Thurl has
Sorry,
started.
Counselor.
I wanna know what the financial is, an extra week we're putting ice in, I wanna know exactly, what the town has to pay out, There's a financial basis putting your ice in another week. You got your extra workers that you gotta move. And all this too, we gotta look at it financially, the town, it's, yeah, these two groups, but the town has to pay the bills for power and gas, water extra. Than what you got.
The differences primarily will be, you are correct, there will be an additional cost.
Yeah.
To the town. It's hard to determine exactly what that would be, because what it basically means is we're already paying our salaries, we're already paying our staff, they're just moving into the arena a week earlier than they otherwise would. Water consumption will be the same regardless. Power will be an extra week of the ice plant being on.
You don't know what the weather's gonna be like, it could be very warm, so
Yeah.
you're going to be really pumped.
Yeah,
with the-
so,
Could be really cold and he wouldn't.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
so there's some variables. But again,
We gotta look at.
you have to offset that versus how much business do we lose to our businesses with our teams going to Drumheller? How much it will affect the rummage sale and being able to provide dollars to the hospital to, improve the equipment there, so.
Well, plus all the people that they draw to the community.
Yeah.
That are using our services and stuff, and I think they've had issues trying to get enough volunteers, and if they decide we're not doing it anymore, then what's the impact in that sense?
Yeah.
As well, so,
Yeah, I don't, there's gonna be a lot of subjective decision making. But I just, if council would say to me, no, we don't wanna move the rummage sale, don't worry about it. And if council's saying, no, we're willing to explore, seeing if we can move the rummage sale a week and get minor hockey in a week, then, we can have those discussions with those groups, so.
Same thing, if it's a month end thing, like maybe do we move it to the end of August for the rubber sale?
yeah, but then volunteer
No,
availability,
no, I'm
Yeah.
just,
yeah,
there's.
as far as an
yeah.
option.
I mean, we
you know,
couldn't
maybe
get
that-
pictures organized for the town either because possibly this one or that one, so I mean.
But at least if we go to the rummage sale group and say, would you consider moving up to the end of August?
That's what I was trying.
Well, that, the options could be them, again. It's for them, it's tradition, and again, they've always had the last part of September, so people have that in their mind, the last part of September. So you'd have to do some more promotion and get the word out if they did move it up a month.
And then, so then if they do agree, then they could have 2 weeks of use, moving it up 2 weeks and.
Yeah, so my goal from this discussion then, I think, is we'll certainly invite representatives from both organizations to be able to present the advantages or disadvantages to them of whichever time we choose, whether minor hockey is gonna start on September 30th or when it's gonna start on October 7th, and vice versa, whether the rummage sale is gonna be September 30th or another alternate date earlier, so.
Yeah.
Just so you
Also,
hear
Warwick,
from
any
them.
input?
Most of the questions I had just got answered, but I have a lot of questions, but I'm gonna wait to have the presentation done, because I think that's gonna unveil some things. The only other thing I was gonna add is over the years, the weather has not always been conducive to having the rummage sale. A couple of years ago, when we had the snowfall, there was a lot of people at the rummage sale, as I meandered through it, said it would be better to have the rummage sale earlier because of the travel that goes on, because we have a lot of people that are coming from out of town. So, I mean, it's not always bad weather, but we have had some years when the weather was not conducive at that time to travel to come to the rummage sale. So, yeah, I would want to hear from each of the entities and to see, I mean, I'm thinking primarily what is the purpose of our arena? You know what, if it's to support our hockey players and those involved in hockey, I might, I'd have to weigh that all out. If we have people from our own community traveling beyond our parameters to use other facilities, that's a great concern for me. That's also taking them out of our community and the dollars that could be spent in our community too by our people going out. So there's lots of things to weigh out in the next little while.
Thanks, Ange. Or Council Warwick, sorry.
Well, and
That's one.
maybe they rummage sale, maybe with some other issues, maybe they would consider going to maybe a once a year.
Yeah, I
draw
can't,
instead. So
yeah.
maybe that's some of the questions that we could ask them, if they do a presentation to kind of help alleviate this and be able to accommodate
Yeah.
several.
Well, and with the COVID thing, I mean, I hate COVID, but I mean, ultimately, they ended up being was it 1.5 years? Or 2 years?
2 years, I think,
Yeah, so I mean. And
Mr.
even after-
Mayor,
Council
the
Warwick.
only other thing I might add, and this has been something I've thought about over the years that I actually worked at the rummage sale, is the one-off weekend that we have it. I mean, I'm wondering if they would actually consider doing it over like a 2-weekend period. And I know that's a big undertaking because of the people involved in it. But there seems to be, and this has been a greater and greater concern with the organization and the people around, is the waste. I know a lot gets distributed out, but there's a lot that is thrown out. It's because it's done in such a short amount of time, everything comes in and you have so many hours to get rid of it. If we could disperse that over, a greater amount of time, maybe that would look different too. And maybe the dollars brought in would look different too. So, I mean, I have some questions to ask the organization too, but just food for thought.
Well, the waste thing, yeah, they have enough people now, so I don't know if they could pull off another weekend, so. No, I like it, so we'll have them come in, we get some questions ready for them, and, yeah, it'll be good, I think. I guess roundtable.
Mayor, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor,
from receipt for information,
Yeah.
yes. Motion to accept the,
I called it the 2023 fall rubbish sale date
yeah,
report, so.
Councilor Olson, you had to get on the map sooner than
That's
later. All in favor? Carried. Roundtable, Councilor Orr, would you like to lead us on?
Sure, I'll start. Thank you. Just something I just want to add in. Chris had the opportunity this morning to sit in on the subdivision development appeal board training. He cannot say enough about how amazing it is. He said in his 14 years of sitting on council, he really felt that this may have been a presentation and maybe a condensed version from Brownlee, that the council would have it would have been very useful to the council in knowledge and understanding of bylaw usage. Yeah, outside of that, I think that's all I have. Thank you for letting me participate by Zoom. I appreciate that.
Good job. Councilor Kroll. Nothing, Councilor Bowden.
I talk enough as it is, but I will. Just wanted to add a little bit more about that weigh-in meeting. It sounds like this was not a short-term issue. It was an issue that kind of grew over time, and it was just the nurses had enough. And they have 2 nursing staff that are working. They have 7 positions available, but they would be able to work if 5 were filled. Some of this, Nate Horner was there in attendance. The Legion Orion was packed to overflow. And there were all sorts of issues. There was, yeah, I guess they had made some suggestions about recruiting and increasing the seats in the universities and colleges. Well, that's 4 years down the way. My understanding is that there is no longer a program in our school or in the Orion school to support training of any kind at the school, which I think is part of the basis of being able to train locally and get people to stay within. So that would be an interest in me to see that gets reinstated in our
So
school.
that was a healthcare aid program.
Healthcare, I can never remember the name
It
of
was a
it,
healthcare aid, so not a LPN.
So that'd be the law.
Not an LPN or registered.
but that's a
nurse.
stepping stone to nursing training.
Potentially, yeah.
So my niece took that course and is now at the taking University for Nursing. It's just, yeah, we need to do something, and that was my concern, is that what they'd indicated is that anybody that had to go to emergency to go to Hannah, which is the closest area, and if their single ambulance is called out, then Hannah will cover. So that means if we are one of our 2 ambulances is out of service, well, then we are out of coverage. The fire chief out of Acadia Valley stood up and said that in December, Orion was 18 days without ambulance coverage. And so I'm not saying that's not, I'm saying that it is a concern, and we're all in the same boat. And that was why I asked if we could get some feedback on how our hospital stands as it is, and I hope we never lose it. So, you know, people have said, well, you chose to move there. Well, at the time that I moved here, there was full ambulance, there was full emergency. Both our kids were born there and everything. So over time, the services have disappeared, and it would be nice to get more services back.
I think Alberta Health Services.
Yeah, if we could go to more of a rural health center or health coverage versus the urbans that seem to be a priority, and are farming their people out as well. Patients are going from Red Deer to Calgary out of anyways,
Airdrie had the same,
yeah, well, it's just, it's all, everyone's in the same boat and.
And that's the difficult part. It's not just
not a
our
quick
region
solution.
that's having issues, it's province-wide,
Oh.
Canada-wide. And that makes it even that much harder because it's affecting everyone to certain degrees and certain differences, so.
But if we could learn to train our own within, I think that's a first stepping. stone.
Retention is critical.
That's all I have.
okay, Council Olson,
No, I got nothing.
Council Bill.
Oh, I'm attending the Community Service Board meeting next Monday at 7. And Friday, I'm going up to talk to the CAO in Stettler about our Elks Conference, Hannah and Stettler are promoting. So we got a group of gentlemen from our group working with them, and we're sending 4 teams to our national curling and state league from Hannah. This year was a big difference because we're doing the Sterling curling as well as the regular curling. It's double the size of our input, which is great because we're losing lots of curlers. But now with the 2-man curling and stuff, it's really bringing
And here I thought Sterling curling would be 55 plus or something.
No. It works for everything. And attending a conference or convention in Calgary with its model train 2-day session. So we're got a booth with a group of pin collectors, but I'm taking some stuff from Hannah. We're going to promote the Roundhouse and a little to work with them. So going to promote Hannah there, so it's going to be a lot of fun to get over and collect pins.
Okay, it's been a busy week. It'll be, I got a couple more engagements. We've got one more today, and then I got the opening ceremonies, and then we have a chamber. But it's good, it's busy. Like I said, it's really amazing the influx of people. And talking to Gary Moore with the U-Haul business, he said it's virtually impossible to rent a U-Haul in hand. Like he said, they're busy all the time. So if you don't book them like months in advance, it's just about impossible. So we are, for the little community, I think we're doing pretty good, and just keep on keeping on. The nursing thing, I think there's it's everybody's, and I don't like to say it, but everybody's in the same boat. We're not unique. We're struggling like everyone else is. CEO Neil and I have had a couple of conversations. Is with rural is it's not exciting, it's not challenging, it's not career developing, it's stagnant. So that's all I have. Same thing, drop over, see the curlers. Welcome to town, and that's it. So adjourned.
Do you have any GFL update? Like, are we ever gonna have a meeting with them or more in the spring or
Haven't had any,
no complaints so far?
we haven't, well, winter, I think we're not going to.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they're
Got a lot
still,
of stuff out there.
they're
Oh,
producing
You know,
like
but I think
crazy.
because of the temperature,
Yeah,
well,
the suppresses the
Yeah.
odor.
Yeah,
I know there was one day, there was a little bit of a hint of odor, but it was very short-lived, and I'm not convinced that it wasn't lagoons.
yeah.
I haven't, it's been quiet over probably since end of October, so I haven't heard anything from anybody one way or the other, so.
I know they hired a couple more locals, so,
So the tour is still on the table.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,